Then I went to Douluo. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 926 Hospital and Mental Power. Miss Lang, judging from the results of the examination, your child is very healthy. As for what you mentioned, he recovered at an abnormal speed. I see here that your child has just awakened his martial soul not long ago, right? Did he have soul power accompanying him when he awakened? Yes, and it's not low? That may be because of the soul power. Research results a long time ago showed that after humans awaken their martial souls and have accompanying soul power, their physical fitness will gradually be transformed and strengthened by soul power in the next few days. The higher the level of innate soul power, the higher and more obvious the degree of strengthening will be. Maybe your child is just at such a stage, so he recovered from the illness very quickly. This stage is mostly adaptive changes made by the human body in order to better accommodate mental power. You don't have to worry. You can take your child to get a mental power test now to see if it is better than before. You haven't tested it before, right? It doesn't matter. When your child goes to school and registers with a supervisory bureau, you will need to enter his or her mental strength level information. It's not too late to test it now. I'll write you a prescription and you can go next. The doctor in a white coat quickly operated on the computer, and then handed the medical card back to Tang Liu. He put it on his smart brain, and an electronic medical form popped up on the screen of the smart brain. Tang Liu said gratefully, "Thank you, doctor." The young and handsome doctor adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, nodded and said, "You're welcome." Tang Wulin obediently let Tang Liu hold his hand, turned around and said goodbye to the doctor brother before leaving. The young doctor smiled back, thinking that this was the first child who wanted to meet with doctors like them again. He didn't care too much, and looked behind to see if anyone had an appointment with him. Not yet. Asking the nurse to help check the clinic, he got up and walked outside. When he went out, he could still see the backs of the mother and son who had just walked away. He walked towards the bathroom in the opposite direction. His eyes hidden behind the gold-rimmed glasses were warm and polite, and he smiled modestly no matter who he faced, and there was nothing wrong with it. But when he brushed shoulders with a man in a gray jacket, his sharp eyebrows slightly frowned. Turning his head, the man's back looked like he had a strong physique, and his steps were very stable, as if every step had been measured. His eyes became a little darker, especially when he saw that the man soon disappeared behind the corner where the mother and son had just passed. The barbecue at Kainsei Square is delicious. Okay, then we'll go eat after the movie, and then watch another one. The conversation coming from the stairwell interrupted his action of trying to catch up. He turned around and saw a couple holding hands and walking up slowly. Seeing him, the good-looking couple smiled at him kindly. He resumed his warm and polite appearance, smiled back, and then turned and walked into the bathroom next to him. He only heard the young couple who had already passed by behind him saying, "The breakfast at Wang Suzi is really ordinary. I still don't like it after eating it so many times. And it's expensive. Yeah, I don't know how their boss opened a chain store, Wang Suzi." Hearing the familiar term, the young doctor's eyes became dim again. Tang Liu has brought Tang Wulin to the neurology department to prepare for the mental power test. On the way, Tang Wulin couldn't help his curiosity. "Mom, what is mental power?" Tang Liu pinched his little face. "Baby, this question is too complicated for you now. When you go to junior high school and learn physics, you will have a general understanding. In short, mental power is a very magical power of thought. Our country's soldiers rely on this magical power to control a mechas." Tang Wulin, "Wow. Mechas." Tang Liu also smiled and agreed with him. "Yes, mechas then, as long as you have mental power, you can control a mechas." Facing Tang Wulin's expectant eyes, Tang Liu pointed at the tip of his pen and smiled. "Mental power is something that everyone has, but not everyone is a mecha master. If you want to make that big guy move, the level of mental power cannot be too low." Tang Wulin himself became anxious first. "Then I have to test my mental power quickly." It was the final result that disappointed Tang Wulin. The doctor on duty in the neurology department was a young, capable, and somewhat cold sister. She looked at the test results given by the mental power detection instrument on the computer, and then looked at the beautiful boy who had just come down from the detection instrument and looked at her expectantly, and her eyelids twitched. She took a deep breath calmly, trying to keep her face expressionless, making herself look like an inhuman doctor. Then she handed the test report to Tang Liu. "Madam, this is the result of your son's mental strength test. It is the lowest level F." Tang Wulan, he couldn't understand what level F meant, and he just heard the word lowest said by the doctor. The doctor tried her best to ignore Tang Wulan's unbelievable look, and her heart trembled. At this moment, she felt that she was the most cruel woman in the world. Compared with Tang Wulan and the socially anxious female doctor whose thoughts drifted away, Tang Yu's reaction seemed much calmer. She was only slightly surprised when she looked at the test report, then she smiled and rubbed Tang Wulan's little head. "It seems that our baby is not a genius in every aspect." Tang Wulan only knew that he was at the lowest level of mental power. He stared at Tang Yu with his big watery eyes and looked up. "Mommy, then can I not drive a mecha?" Tang Yu, "Sorry, baby, the lowest level mecha also requires at least D-level mental power to control it." Tang Wulan felt like a bolt from the blue hit his head, and the corners of his mouth drooped in grievance. Tang Yu soothingly, "But baby, don't be discouraged. It doesn't matter if your innate mental power is not high. You will slowly practice in the future, and your mental power level will slowly increase. When you practice to almost the level of Soul King, you can try to control the mecha." Tang Wulan cheered up again. "Well, I will work hard to practice to drive a mecha, then the purpose of this trip to the hospital has been achieved." Tang Yu also confirmed that Tang Wulan was really recovered based on the mental power test report. After there was no problem, she took Tang Wulan away from the hospital with peace of mind. Tang Wulan also did not forget what Tang Yu said when he was brought out. He became excited after getting in the car. "Let's go to the mall. Let's go to the mall." Tang Yu fastened the child's seat belt for him. "Be good and sit tight, don't move. Otherwise it will be dangerous. Be careful not to fall down, and hit your head." Tang Wulan nodded obediently. "Yes. There are thousands of roads. Safety is the first. Mommy, you should also drive slowly, and be a good baby who obeys traffic rules." Tang Yu smiled and patted his little face. "Baby is right." Soon, the mother and son drove away from the hospital. The young doctor also quietly left the monitoring room. Not far from the door, he ran into the security personnel who had just left. The little security guard was surprised. "Dr. Meng, why did you come down?" The doctor showed a perfect smile. "I came down to pick up a parcel." He shook the parcel box in his hand. The little security guard nodded, and did not say anything more. After saying goodbye, he passed by the doctor. The doctor's eyes behind the glasses flashed slightly. He flipped his hand and there was a small USB flash drive in his hand. It was the surveillance video he copied. Thanks to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets, the dog author barely figured out the content of a small part recently. Because it is necessary to string together several forces including the Tang sect at the same time, all the way to the national sacrifice, and then introduce the general direction of the Douluo part, it took more than a week to conceive. And for the content of Douluo, I saved a lot of stocks, just like the style of short stories on a certain website, short, funny and refreshing, with logical connections, unexpected and eye-catching, and it must also fit the content of Douluo, so there was no good writing direction before, and I was stuck for a long time. I struggled for a long time and still couldn't find the most satisfactory direction. There are many ideas but they can't be connected, and I feel that they are not suitable for the worldview of Douluo, but more suitable for the new book I am preparing to open. Let it go, lie down, anyway, I can write it slowly. Dead fish eyes. Douluo is just an easy and daily mess. Bushy, see you tomorrow. Chapter 927 Wulan and Beautiful Sister. Yes, boss, I'm already near Kaiansui. The target just went in not long ago. I'll follow him in. The man in the gray jacket put his hands in his pockets, his sinister face hidden in the shadow of the old-fashioned baseball cap. His raised collar and slightly lowered hood just covered the communicator in his ears, and his slightly open lips made him look like an ordinary passerby. It's not easy to do it in the hospital. I'll find another opportunity in the mall. Okay, I'll do it as soon as possible. The fingers of his left hand in his pocket moved slightly, turning off the intelligent brain communication. He pulled the brim of his hat and quickened his pace towards the mall entrance. Run slower, don't rush, be careful not to fall. Oh, if you don't hurry up, the movie will start. Suddenly, a hurried conversation was heard behind him. He ignored it at first and continued to walk forward. But in the next second, he was knocked to the ground and his hat flew off. Before he could stand firm, the person who bumped into him took the lead to support him. He quickly reached out and grabbed his hat, and put it back on him. Turning around, he saw a pretty boy looking at him with a smile. "I'm sorry, big brother. I was in a hurry and didn't pay attention to the road. I accidentally bumped into you. Are you okay?" The man in the gray jacket broke away from him indifferently, straightened the brim of his hat, and said in a cold voice, "It's okay, I'll be more careful next time." He continued to walk forward without any intention of stopping. The voice of the pretty boy was heard behind him. I'm sorry. Then a female voice complained, "I told you to slow down, but you didn't listen. Now you bumped into someone, right? Okay, it's my fault. Let's go, sister, our movie is really about to begin." Before entering the mall, the man in the gray jacket glanced to the side and just saw the pretty boy pulling a blonde beauty into the external elevator of the mall next to him. He curled his lips and secretly complained that the pretty boy was really lucky. If there was no more important goal, the man in the gray jacket's wolf-like eyes would be sharply locked on the mother and son who were standing on the escalator in the distance and slowly going up. He followed them without stopping. Lang Yu first took Tang Liu to the supermarket in the mall to buy vegetables and snacks that the little guy liked. When she came out with the things, she took Tang Liu to the children's clothing store to buy 2 new clothes. Then they passed by a women's clothing store and were so excited to see the prey that they couldn't help but walk in and have a look. Tang Liu was not interested in trying clothes with his mother or watching his mother choose clothes. Instead, he looked at the children's play area not far away and was very eager. Looking at Lang Yu eagerly, he pointed in that direction. "Mommy, can I go over there to play?" Lang Yu couldn't let go of the new product from this store. In her busy schedule, she just looked up at the children's play area over there and nodded. "Yeah, go ahead, play over there and wait for your mother to come find you, but don't follow strangers." Tang Liu smiled and ran over there skipping. When he was about to reach the children's play area, a familiar low voice suddenly came to his mind. "Be careful, human cub, someone is here to catch you." Tang Liu. He reacted for a second to figure out who the owner of the voice was, and he didn't have time to stop. When the 2 words "who" were about to come out of his mouth, he suddenly bumped into someone. A faint fragrance came to his nose, and before he could react, the person in front of him raised his hand and hugged him, and he also realized that he fell into a soft embrace. "Are you okay, little brother?" A pleasant voice sounded above his head. Tang Liu looked up blankly and met a pair of smiling purple eyes and long silver hair with a strong visual impact. At the same second, the low voice in his mind that said angrily, "It's been so long since you forgot me and you are simply unreasonable as a human being," also stopped abruptly as if the pause button was suddenly pressed. The breathtakingly beautiful woman with silver hair and purple eyes had a deeper smile on her almost flawless face. Her red lips were slightly curled, and her smile seemed to be a little playful. "Why are you stunned, little guy?" The slightly hoarse voice sounded lazy and seductive, like a cat's paw playing with wool. That little guy. I don't know if it was calling Tang Liu, or is it actually referring to someone else. The opportunity has come. The man in the gray jacket watched the target run out of the clothing store alone, and was about to step forward. But he stopped in the next second. Because Tang Liu bumped into the silver-haired and purple-eyed passerby, he couldn't just snatch her right in front of him. So he frowned and stopped where he was, waiting for the right moment. Tang Liu looked stupid and incompetent, and froze for a long time before staring at the beautiful face. "Big sister, you are so pretty." The silver-haired and purple-eyed sister smiled softly and rubbed his head. "Thank you for the compliment, little brother, you are also pretty." Tang Liu felt that he was floating all over. The beautiful sister praised him. He couldn't help but giggle twice, which made the silver-haired and purple-eyed beautiful sister couldn't help but chuckle. The beautiful sister pinched his tender little face and said, "Little brother, what's your name? Why are you alone? Where are your parents?" Tang Liu answered without any defense, "Big sister, my name is Tang Liu. I'm not alone either. My mother is in there. I'm waiting for her here." The beautiful sister looked in the direction he pointed, then retracted her gaze and smiled. "So that's how it is. But obedient children won't run around. What if they accidentally meet bad guys?" The man in the gray jacket was getting impatient. He sighed in his heart and wondered unhappily why the woman didn't leave. If he dragged it on, what if the child's mother came out? Wouldn't he miss such a good opportunity in vain? However, just as he looked at the silver-haired woman unscrupulously with a dissatisfied and sadistic look, I don't know if it was accidental, the woman's purple eyes that seemed to be able to capture people's hearts glanced in his direction. Then he heard her light voice. An obedient child won't run around. What if he accidentally encounters a bad guy? He was startled. Was he exposed? Although he didn't know why, Tang Wulin didn't want to leave a bad impression on the beautiful sister in front of him. He scratched his head and said, I didn't run around. I told my mother. Then he puffed out his chest and raised the smart brain on his wrist to show the beautiful sister, saying in a boastful tone of I'm very powerful, don't worry, and big sister, if you are in danger, you can find a police uncle. I can already use the smart brain to call the police. The beautiful sister opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. But after pausing for a second, she just smiled and said, okay, sister believes that you are a smart and clever child and will not be deceived by bad people. Then she stood up and rubbed Tang Wulin's head again, but it is better to stay with your mother to be safer. Sister is leaving, it's nice to meet you, little brother Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin looked at the beautiful sister reluctantly and nodded, well, goodbye, big sister, goodbye. The beautiful sister waved her hand, turned around and walked away, leaving only the fragrant breath. Tang Wulin looked at the beautiful sister's back and her slightly raised silver hair, and suddenly felt a little lost. Because he didn't know the beautiful sister's name yet. Will he meet again in the future? See you all tomorrow. Chapter 928, Meeting of the Gold and Silver Dragon Kings. Finally, they left. Grey Jacket was delighted. As he strode towards Tang Wulin, he reached into his pocket. There was a handy gadget that they liked to use the most. Just stick it on the cervical spine and anyone with a mental power lower than D level will immediately fall into a semi-comatose state similar to obeying orders. Of course, obeying orders is a bit of an exaggeration. After all, it is just a gadget, and it is far less powerful than implanted chips and neural collars, which are almost inhumane, but it is more than enough to make a child who is only 6 years old lose all the ability to resist and call for help, while appearing to be normal on the surface. Grey Jacket's face was already covered with a cruel smile of this is a sure thing. But his steps suddenly froze the moment his hand reached into his pocket. Because the pocket where the gadget should have been placed was now empty. Grey Jacket's expression also became like his pocket, empty for a second. Unconvinced, he searched several other pockets on his body, but the result was the same. He didn't feel anything. His mind was blank now. How could it be? Or when? He thought of the pretty boy who bumped into him outside the mall. With a dark face, he slowly clenched his fists. Because from the time he left home until now, he had physical contact with him, and he was the only one who could possibly take things from him. Only that pretty boy. The man in the grey jacket glanced at Tang Wulin not far away. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only pretend that nothing had happened and slowly walk away, waiting for the next opportunity, which might be difficult to come again. The pretty boy had better pray that he doesn't run into him again, or the grey jacket thought bitterly. Guyuna turned into the women's restroom of the mall with ease, tied her hair in front of the mirror in the sink, and calmly touched up her makeup. Then she glanced to the side and looked at the golden dragon in the mirror. She calmly put on lipstick and said, as a man, following me into the women's restroom, isn't that a bit too rude, huh? With a pop, she closed the lipstick cap. Or are you eager to go to the police station for a few days? The Golden Dragon King looked at her for a long time no see, Silver Dragon King. He paused again and said, or, you actually prefer the name Guyuna now, whatever. Guyuna shrugged indifferently, it's just a name anyway, just go with what you're used to. She reached under the faucet and let the water of suitable temperature wash through her fingers. Suddenly fell into silence again, and the Golden Dragon King just looked at her. Until she took a tissue and slowly wiped her hands. He said in a calm voice, I'm glad you're still alive, Silver. Guyuna also turned around for the first time and looked at him directly. After a pause, she said, I'm also glad that you're still alive, Gold. After a while, before the Golden Dragon King opened his mouth to say anything, he curled his lips and said first, but the women's restroom is not a place for you to stay. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers, and the Golden Dragon King disappeared in the silver light. Not long after, Jin Ringsu walked out of the cubicle next to her with her arms folded, looked at Guyuna in the mirror, raised her eyebrows and said, let's talk. Guyuna slung her new bag, sighed lightly, and smiled helplessly. Which store? Jin Ringsu also smiled. Yangzi Ganlu, I ordered it. Do you want to drink it? Guyuna, drink. So, Guyuna held the cup and looked at the two people opposite. Leaving the Golden Dragon King with Tang Wulin is just to deal with the current situation? Human trafficking? Her incomprehensible eyes fell on Tang Liu, who was disguised as black-haired and black-eyed, and said, "There is only one country now, where can they sell people?" Tang Liu sneered, his face somewhat teasing. On an alien planet that is being developed, the powerful and wealthy with special hobbies should not underestimate the role that a human can play, nor underestimate a person's selfishness. Okay, Jin Ringsu curled her lips. With the cheapest labor and advanced medicine today, everyone has a treasure. Who knows which organ in your body is exactly what others desire? From a commodity perspective, a person is much more valuable than a gem or precious metal. Guyuna did not respond immediately and remained silent. But looking at Tang Liu's suspicious eyes, she had already clearly expressed what she meant. What she meant was that with a guy of your level watching, could such a thing happen? Tang Liu spread his hands. How should I put it? Have you ever seen a sentence called "where there is demand, there will be a market"? I can manage myself, but I can't manipulate other people's thoughts all the time, right? Unless humans evolve into a swarm, Jin Ringsu, even your soul beast tribes will kill each other for food or territory. Of course, the struggles of human beings in secret are not as pure as yours. Tang Liu tapped the table with his fingertips and said, "These things are what the emperor should worry about. Let's get back to business." He looked at Guyuna. "You think this is just an attempted human trafficking, but have you ever thought about who ordered him? I think you can see that his target is almost very clear, that is Tang Wulin." Guyuna thought for a while. If someone specifically wants Tang Wulin, who would it be? What special meaning does Tang Wulin have for him? After all, no matter how you look at it, Tang Wulin is just a child from an ordinary family. Unless, she glanced at the two people opposite who had the same indifferent expression, that person knows Tang Wulin's true identity, or origin. Tang Liu could not deny. Now you know that there is something behind this matter, then for this human trafficking organization that was used as a gun. Stop. Guyuna raised her hand to stop her and smiled. I don't want to listen, and I don't care. At your current level, you probably already know who is behind this, and getting rid of those people is just a thought. And you also placed the Golden Dragon King next to Tang Wulin, so the little guy's safety is not a problem anyway. So, whether you two are trying to find some fun in your boring life or have other intentions, I will not participate in your house playing games, understand? She shook the cup in her hand and stood up to leave. Thank you for the treat, I will treat you again next time when I am free. Don't bother me if you don't have anything to do, I'm busy recently. Tang Liu and Jin Ringsu looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Wait, Tang Liu called Guyuna. Guyuna looked back. Tang Liu's expression remained unchanged. What if I tell you that this human trafficking organization is also related to illegal soul beast trading? A soul beast co-lord walked back in 3 or 2 steps and sat down again. Guyuna, tell me more. Tang Liu's smile became even bigger. His nonchalant expression seemed to be in control. The Tang sect has been tracking them for a long time, so they just need a little help. Just watch and wait for the result, then I will be sure. Why is it here? So stuck. Chapter 929 The Killer Moves Out. Wang Suzhe, a well-known chain breakfast shop in Jiangnan province, is famous for its expensive and unpalatable breakfast. Of course, the unpalatable taste is just a complaint from the general public that the presentation of its products is not worthy of its high price, and the breakfast sold on its menu is still edible. Such a mostly notorious shop can become the largest chain store in Jiangnan province, which is inseparable from the support of stubborn citizens who go to try it out of disbelief. Maybe it also involves the issue of face. After all, the price of Wang Suzhe is indeed worth taking a few pictures and posting on WhatsApp moments, but the things it sells are not really unpalatable to the point of being inedible. However, such a normal breakfast shop is suspected to be involved in many cases of human trafficking and soul beast smuggling. It's surprising, right? A breakfast shop can be associated with these things that have nothing to do with each other. If the suspicion is true, this breakfast shop has violated almost all the laws of the empire, and it is even rampant enough to open chain stores all over Jiangnan province. He was literally stripping naked and dancing on the heads of His Majesty and the Imperial Master, and shaking his hands in a way that dominated the hot searches for 3 days and 3 nights, attracting people to learn and applaud. Mangju recalled what the contact person told him before he left, adjusted the surveillance footage on the computer screen, found the clearest frame of the gray jacket's face, performed facial analysis, and compared it with the organization's database. Sure enough, no suspicious information was found, and all the information displayed looked the same as that of an ordinary citizen. There were only some records of being taken to the police station for fighting incidents, which were irrelevant, and the information showed that he was not the party at fault. But his fingers moved gently, opened another window, and quickly hacked into the city's surveillance, calling up all the surveillance footage of the gray jacket all the way to the hospital. The lens reflected the light of the screen, covering up the flash of coldness in his eyes. He looked at the gray jacket who had just stepped out of a building in the picture, and the three large antique characters on the sign behind him. Sure enough, he came out of Wang Suzie. His fingers flew, and he quickly found the place where the gray jacket last appeared today through the surveillance. He opened the drawer and pulled out a scalpel. He stood up and walked outside. The gray jacket had taken off his jacket and was wearing a vest, revealing a muscular but bruised body. He raised his hand and gently touched his slightly swollen face, and then used the iodine-soaked face to disinfect the wound at the corner of his mouth, and suddenly he screamed in pain. He looked at his own blue eyes in the mirror, and he was so angry that his teeth itched. Thinking of the blonde woman this afternoon, he had never suffered such a big loss. The skills of several grown men were completely crushed by that woman. And that pretty boy who was watching the show, he was so angry just thinking about his expression at that time. But the idea was difficult, and he could only accept his fate after being defeated today. Not to mention that he couldn't beat him. Even if he did, he would have to pretend that he couldn't beat him. Who knew that the pretty boy was actually from the Supervisory Bureau? Although he was furious, he was secretly glad that it was a misunderstanding this afternoon, and that the pretty boy from the Supervisory Bureau was not the one who took the micro-brain wave jammer, otherwise the matter would be serious. If he was targeted by the Supervisory Bureau, he would be dealt with first without waiting for the people from the Supervisory Bureau to come out to catch him. Damn it, how did that thing disappear? He hissed while treating his wounds, and cursed to vent his anger. It was such a good opportunity today, and he was about to succeed, but he failed, and the reward from above flew away. You'd better not let me catch him. Hiss, that woman is so cruel. Who is she? And she has such a high level of cultivation at such a young age? He was cursing, and suddenly he smelled a strange fishy and sweet smell in his nose. He was startled and suddenly realized that something was wrong. It seemed that the surroundings had become too quiet without him noticing. He frowned and turned to walk out of the bathroom. However, as soon as he walked out of the door, a sharp scalpel was pressed against his throat. The sting and pain made him dare not move, because with just a slight scratch, the person holding the knife could cut his carotid artery neatly. And the man happened to be standing in the blind spot of his sight, and he couldn't even turn his eyes to look at the attacker's face. The man spoke quickly, and his voice was almost mechanical and cold. Zidingshan, it was his name. The cold touch on his throat made him extremely uncomfortable, but he remained calm. Do you know me? The voice did not answer, but instead said, as the owner of a gym, why do you frequently go in and out of a breakfast shop that you have no business dealings with, and often stay there for several hours? Zidingshan, what do you mean, sir? The voice continued, you were involved in the smuggling of 3,000-year-old soul beasts a week ago, right? Similarly, before the incident, the surveillance camera captured the scene of you entering Wang Suzie from the back door. Zidingshan was shocked in his heart, but he did not show it on his face, pretending to be calm. I don't understand what you are talking about. Man, it is illegal to trespass. His knee was suddenly kicked, and he groaned, and his body fell to the ground uncontrollably under the huge force. Wrong answer, the man said lightly, and also pulled back the scalpel across his neck. But it still left a shallow blood mark on his throat. The cold stinging feeling seemed to still remain on the skin, constantly provoking the nerves. Zidingshan was extremely angry, but he had no time to resist. When a hard object pressed against the back of his head, his mind calmed down again. He also recognized the identity of the object at once, and cold sweat covered his back. It was a blaster. Then who is the person behind him? How could he possess a lethal weapon that could only be seen in the hands of violent agencies in this country that prohibits guns? Was it the Supervisory Bureau? Could it be related to the pretty boy in the afternoon? He thought a lot in his mind in an instant, and slowly raised his hands to indicate that he gave up resistance. At such a close distance, even if he could let his martial spirit possess him before the other party fired, he would be instantly blown in the head by the huge energy, and even his brain would not have time to splatter, but would only be turned into ashes in the strong energy. But what about the others? They were obviously in the room around him. Why was there no movement now? How did this guy behind him get in quietly? You have the last 20 seconds to decide whether to tell the truth. Otherwise, the cold and indifferent voice sounded again. At this moment, he suddenly felt an unbearable and severe pain in his abdomen, as if his intestines were torn apart by an invisible hand. He couldn't help it and vomited blood. He looked at the black blood on the ground, and remembered the fishy and sweet smell he smelled before, and his face was extremely ugly. "You poisoned me," he was puzzled and shocked. But, when Mengju kept holding the gun against the back of his head, turned the scalpel with his other hand, and said lightly, "You have 10 seconds, 2 functional NPCs that will not appear for too long, Doge." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 930, Tragedy Caused by a Movie Ticket. You never know which will come first, tomorrow or an accident. So, don't take it lightly at any time, especially when the person standing in front of you is not a corpse. When Mengju read the last 5 seconds silently, he thought that this guy was still tough. However, just when he began to consider other ways to obtain information, something unexpected happened. Zidingshan, who was kneeling on the ground and trembling in pain, suddenly jumped up. In the blink of an eye, his body was covered with a layer of bright gray like steel. He twisted his body and threw a punch backwards, bringing a gust of cold wind. When Mengju frowned and avoided it, he suddenly felt that his nagging contact person was quite right. He glanced at the 3 soul rings on Zidingshan's body, 1 white, 1 yellow and 1 purple. When the other party roared and strode towards him, he flew up nimbly, stepped on the wall twice, and easily got behind Zidingshan again. Then he raised his palm and chopped him hard on the back of his neck, knocking him to the ground very cleanly. The soul ring extinguished, and all signs of the spirit possession disappeared. Mengju waited for a while before he stepped forward and stretched out his leg to hook Zidingshan, who was lying on the ground and unconscious, and turned him over. Frowning, he squatted down and opened his eyelids to look, and happened to see the inexplicable blue light fading from his iris. He took his pulse and found that the poison he had previously applied was inexplicably removed at this time. He searched him again and finally found a crumpled movie ticket stub from his trouser pocket, and from the surveillance footage he found today, Zidingshan had never entered any movie theater. So this movie ticket obviously did not belong to Zidingshan. Someone else put it on him, and the purpose might be to wait for him to come. Mengju had such an intuition. He looked at the showtime written on the movie ticket and was suddenly stunned. Because at that time, the barbecue at Kaiansi Square is delicious. Okay, then we'll go eat after the movie, and then watch another one. It was just shortly after the couple appeared. The hospital where he worked was located at a distance from the nearest Kaiansi Square. If he took a taxi there, it would be just the time when the movie show written on the ticket was about to start. Mengju's eyes darkened. Thinking carefully, it was precisely because he accidentally heard the young couple mention Wang Shizhe that he checked Zidingshan's movements today and confirmed that the other party was indeed related to Wang Shizhe. Otherwise, he would have thought that Zidingshan was just a malicious stalker. He recalled that when he was looking through the surveillance before, he seemed to have seen a scene where Zidingshan and his accomplices had a confrontation with someone. But what he needed was to trace the source. He didn't pay much attention to what happened after the encounter in the hospital. It seems that he has to investigate it again. After handling the scene with ease, Mengju left as quietly as he came. Don't miss any details related to the target. Maybe the clues and the truth are hidden in that small and inconspicuous place. Maybe it's good to listen to the liaison's chatter occasionally. How did you know that he wouldn't see through us right away? Tang Liu shrugged. Well, you wouldn't suspect a passerby on the street of having ulterior motives just because he said he was going to do something, right? From beginning to end, we only said that the barbecue at Kaiansi Square was delicious and we were going to see a movie, but we didn't directly mention that we were going to Kaiansi Square. Because the barbecue at Kaiansi Square is delicious, we're going to Kaiansi Square after the movie. This kind of secondary information obtained after processing is much more normal to the ears of people like them than directly saying we're going to Kaiansi Square later, because it doesn't sound deliberate, right? It was a dark and windy night, and Tang Liu smiled at Jinriksu across the table through the light and nodded. That's right. Then he turned and looked out the dark window. The street lights in the community were turned off at some point. Here they come. He smiled. His guess was not wrong. The couple, who were clearly just a chance encounter, appeared in the hospital where the target Zidingshan was looking for had appeared. Then they happened to mention Wang Xihe, which he was looking for, which made him suspicious. The couple also appeared in Qianxi Square, where the target Zidingshan was looking for had appeared. Before that, he thought it was reasonable because he happened to hear that the couple's subsequent schedule was to go to the movies and eat barbecue. The destination cinema and store happened to be in Qianxi Square. The injuries on Zidingshan's body, and the crumpled movie ticket. After he rewatched the surveillance footage of the time after the hospital, everything became clear. So all the seemingly coincidental things were actually done deliberately by someone. Including the couple who accidentally bumped into Zidingshan outside Qianxi Square. Including the couple who actually lived next to the address of the target Zidingshan was looking for. Meng Zhu's figure approached the window where no light was seen like a ghost in the dark. It is early in the morning, when most people fall into deep sleep. His expression was not clear in the darkness, but he was still skilled. He silently pried open the locked window, crawled through the broken security net, and successfully sneaked into the house, and all he did was based on the premise that the owner had fallen into deep sleep and was indeed an unsuspecting ordinary person. Obviously, this was impossible. Whether it was the skills displayed by the couple in the surveillance or everything that happened today, the other party had planned it. The moment his feet just stepped silently on the floor of the room, Meng Zhu felt a strong wind blowing by his ears. He dodged sideways, and his eyes lit up a faint purple light in the darkness. Then, before the opponent's next attack came, he raised his arms that had turned into white jade. Meng Zhu's figure sank, surprised by the strength of his opponent's attack. But he didn't have time to think more, because the figure in the dark had already retracted his fist and suddenly fell backwards. Later, the man's slender and powerful legs followed. Even though his arms had turned into hard white jade, he was still numb and trembling from the kicks. When his heart sank, he saw the man raising his leg and kicking him. He used his internal strength, his palm formed into a claw shape, and grabbed the man's ankle through the void. An inexplicable force emerged, slightly pulling the man's kicking foot off the original track. Then he took an illusory step, and in the blink of an eye, he had flashed away like a ghost and disappeared into the darkness. Meng Zhu hid behind the sofa, waiting for an opportunity to move. However, at this time, his ears caught a slight buzzing sound. It sounded like the sound of a mechanical cooling fan. He turned back suddenly, and the cold light in his hand stabbed behind him. But his arm was firmly grasped by someone halfway, and he could no longer move at all. He looked at the tall, heavily armored knight in the dark, and the light emitted by the pair of blue eyes surprised him. The fun ends here. Now a deep male voice came from the side. Meng Zhu turned his head and saw a dark figure who appeared at the dining table. He seemed to have been sitting there for a long time, silently witnessing the whole process. Then in the darkness, he saw the other person's eyes slightly lit up. It was a thrilling purple. The light was weak but just enough to see the corners of his lips raised. He said with a smile, "Let's talk about it. This killer is not very professional." Chapter 931. No one will wait for you forever, except. That must be the purple demon pupil. He thought firmly. And judging from the depth of the purple color revealed in that short moment, and the other party's eyes that were as transparent as pure amethyst at that moment, the realm of the other party's purple demon pupil is very high. At least far beyond his own. Meng Zhu was surprised, suspicious, and unbelievable, but he had completely withdrawn his vigilance. The lights were on, and he did not feel the slightest discomfort of suddenly entering the bright area. He immediately looked at the young man sitting at the dining table. The purple light in his eyes was gradually fading, and his eyes were dark, like a deep abyss in a prison, which seemed to be able to capture people's souls. Just an accidental collision of eyes, there was an indescribable pressure coming. Meng Zhu looked at the handsome but unfamiliar face of the young man, and was very sure that he had never seen him in the organization. And he glanced at the heavy armored knight next to him, who was silent but imposing. He was also very sure that no one in the organization could be related to the White Tiger Guards, who were only loyal to the royal family. Not to mention that the person next to him was there specifically to protect the safety of the young man in front of him. So, Meng Zhu, who are you? But he swore that when he asked these three words, the heavily armored soldier next to him immediately looked like he was going to force him to kneel down, as if he had done something very rude. But before the White Tiger Guard kicked him in the knee, the young man on the opposite side raised his hand in time to stop him. The restrained arm regained its freedom, and the soldier disappeared as quietly as he appeared. Meng Zhu shook his arm, which was a little painful, and looked at the tall blonde woman who was slowly walking by. It should be the black figure who had just fought with him, and also the lady who beat up Zidingshan's group this afternoon. And he has already experienced it. Jin Ringsu walked behind Tang Liu, leaned against the wall with her arms folded, and looked at him with interest. Tang Liu met Meng Ju's inquiring eyes and smiled. Maybe you have a lot of doubts in your heart now, but with the eyes you just saw, I think it is enough to establish a temporary and simple trust relationship between you and me. He pointed to his eyes. Sure enough, it is the purple demon eye. Meng Ju thought. He said, I have never seen you before, so why do you know the unique skills of the Tang sect? Tang Liu raised the corner of his lips. I remember that in your system, considering your level, there are still many things you don't know, so it is normal that you have never seen people who know those unique skills outside of the Tang sect. Meng Ju, indeed. Then everything you did today, is it just to bring me here to talk with you? If so, it would be a bit too much trouble. All the encounters and coincidences seem to have known his true identity for a long time, and it is obvious that the identity information of all of them is strictly confidential, and only the sect master has the authority to access it. Even His Majesty finds it difficult to bypass the authority of the sect master. Because such measures are all to protect people like them, allowing them to sink inconspicuously in the crowd, and become a sharp knife stabbing from the dark when needed. Tang Liu, how should I put it? That's only one aspect. Haven't you been tracking Wang Suzhi for a long time, but can't find any obvious clues? So, he spread his hands, and a kind of innocent look appeared on his face. Meng Ju felt a little itchy in his fists. But his mind was still analyzing calmly. This person has a very fast and extensive source of information, and can even get things they don't know faster than their organization. Meng Ju, then I have to thank you for your guidance, otherwise I wouldn't suspect Wang Suzhi. But if it's just to tell me that Zidingshan is related to Wang Suzhi, why do you contact him so frequently? For example, the fight with Zidingshan's group in the afternoon. Meng Ju is not sure about the reason. Tang Liu smiled and glanced at Jin Ringsu, who looked indifferent. Then he said mysteriously, well, after the unsuccessful start, Zidingshan never encountered a suitable opportunity like just now. From then on, Tang Wulin stayed with Langaiu all the time, and never got alone. I don't know if he remembered what the beautiful big sister with silver hair and purple eyes said. Or did he get a hint from someone? Anyway, until Zidingshan followed the mother and son to the underground parking lot and watched them drive away from Kaiansi Square, he never had the chance to take action. Mission failed. No one knew when Tang Wulin would go out again. Zidingshan was irritable, but he could only return to the ground in shame and prepare to leave. As a result, when passing the entrance of Kaiansi Cinema, I didn't expect that Su Chen was quite talented in acting. Tisk. He always had the same expressionless face, and the characters he played were all expressionless, so of course there was no sense of disobedience. The young couple, who were holding unfinished popcorn and coke and discussing a character in the movie that had just ended, suddenly bumped into him, and the popcorn and coke spilled all over him. Zidingshan, the culprit. Tang Liu looked guilty. He pulled out a bunch of tissues from somewhere and quickly wiped the face of the passerby. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I didn't pay attention to the road. Sorry, uncle. Zidingshan, whose face was covered with wet tissues, he wiped his face silently and pulled off all the tissues stuck on his face. Tang Liu looked at his face and was immediately surprised. Hey, it's you, brother. What a coincidence to meet you again. Zidingshan heard the word again and his back teeth were clenched tightly. He stared at Tang Liu silently for a while, and then said, did you do it on purpose or accidentally? Tang Liu, the impetuous young man, was generous. He turned around and took him into a famous brand store. With a wave of his hand, he gave him several sets of high-end custom-made clothes that he couldn't afford at all as compensation. It's a pity that he watched the young man hug the blonde beauty's arm and act coquettishly, and then the blonde beauty took out her card and paid with a doting look. He thought with contempt. As expected, he was a gigolo. But no matter how much he despised him, the young man in front of him was still his target of suspicion, the guy who might have stolen his micro-brainwave jammer and caused his mission to fail. So he accepted the apology and left in a friendly manner, then turned around and found the farthest toilet in the mall and sent a message to someone to check the information of the couple. Then, when he pretended to wash his hands and was about to check the message back, someone rushed in hurriedly, holding his stomach, and because he was going too fast, he couldn't brake and bumped into him. His hand twisted, and the smart brain on his wrist was flushed under the faucet. However, the smart brain, which should have super high waterproof performance, went black under the water. No matter how he pressed it, there was no response. At the same time, he heard that familiar voice, but it sounded like a devil to him now. "Hey, brother, we meet again." Zidingshan looked at the young man in the mirror expressionlessly. Tang Liu pointed at his flooded brain, looking very innocent. Brother, your brain is broken." Zidingshan's fist was throbbing with veins. "Very good. Now it's not just about the micro-brainwave jammer. He may also have to settle a personal grudge." Chapter 932, Falling into Trap. Maybe he was really unlucky today. Just when he couldn't help but clench his fist and hit the guy in front of him, someone else came in from outside. Tang Liu had already rushed into a cubicle, holding his stomach, and only left him a sentence: "Brother, let's talk about compensation later, wait for me first." Then he closed the door of the cubicle, and soon there was a series of rather bad noises. The passerby who just came in was shocked. "Oh my god, Splatoon." He hesitated for a while, not knowing whether to continue moving forward. Zidingshan, unlucky. Zidingshan had a dark face and hurried away with the water-soaked intelligent computer. As for the pretty boy who turned into Splatoon, let him be spared for now. Wait until he finds out the detailed origins of the young couple. There's no need to describe such disgusting things so vividly, right? Mengju's mouth twitched, and his expressionless face almost cracked. Tang Liu groaned, and pressed the smart brain, and suddenly a series of ominous loud noises began to play in the room. Do you know what it means to be prepared? What strange things can't be found on the internet now? Mengju stared blankly. Then your hobby is quite special. Jin Ringsu kicked Tang Liu's stool leg, rolled her eyes and said, "Turn it off quickly." Tang Liu's face was full of dissatisfaction. "I'm giving him a little internet shock, Mengju." So then, Tang Liu turned off the audio. Later Zidingshan left the mall without stopping, for fear of accidentally encountering that unlucky thing again. He returned to the base camp and immediately asked his brothers to find out the identity information of the young couple. "Brother, the identity of the person you are looking for is very clean. There is nothing unusual." "What's the matter?" The younger brother with dyed yellow hair showed the identity information he found to Zidingshan, and then smiled with ill intent. "Brother, are you interested in this woman and want to snatch her away? I have to say, this blonde woman is really beautiful, like a fairy. I think she is not much inferior to Shrek's holy spirit Douluo Yali." Zidingshan glanced at him, thinking of the many high-end clothes that the blonde woman bought to compensate him, and said lightly, "This woman's identity is not simple. Are you sure you have found out everything? Someone who is so generous must not be a person without any background. Moreover, just looking at that face, unless she is a cultivator with profound cultivation, an ordinary family cannot raise such a beautiful girl." "Don't worry, brother, I have found out everything." The yellow-haired little brother stretched out his fingers and tapped on the keyboard again, calling up more detailed information. "This woman is just a president of a small and unknown company, who looks like she started her own business. But that company seems to be a shell company. You know who it is, right?" "How?" Zidingshan sneered. "No wonder he is so generous and can support a gigolo." He immediately asked the yellow-haired little brother to adjust the surveillance. "Find out their current location for me, and then ask a few brothers to go with me." The yellow-haired little brother was surprised. "Boss, how did these two guys offend you?" Zidingshan gritted his teeth and looked at the ID photo of the young man with a sunny smile on the screen, his expression gloomy. "Nothing. I just don't like him." "Then you deliberately went to the western suburbs where there are fewer people, just to create opportunities for them." Mengju still didn't take a seat, but stood in front of the dining table with a vigilant posture, looking at Tang Liu with an indifferent expression, and asked again. Tang Liu looked at him meaningfully. "Maybe it's not just to lure them out." Mengju's eyes narrowed. "It's broad daylight, and it's not easy to do it in crowded places. But the young couple came to such a remote place. How can this not be said to be God's will? There is a semi-abandoned amusement park in the western suburbs, and there is a haunted house that has been closed for a long time. Many young couples and young people who are looking for excitement like to come here. After all, this kind of place is also the kind of internet celebrity check-in place often mentioned on the internet. And this place is also very familiar to him." Zidingshan brought a large group of people and blocked Tang Liu and Jin Ringsu in front of a small alley. And this time, he spoke first when the smile on the young man's face gradually widened. He grinned and said, "What a coincidence, we meet again, huh? Tang Liu, whose line was stolen." choked for a second, and immediately continued with a smile. Yes, what a coincidence, big brother, we meet again. You said I asked you to wait for me when we were in Kaianzi. Why did you run so fast? Now that we meet, it's just right. Let's talk about the compensation for your intelligent computer. He played the role of a young man with clear and stupid eyes very well, and he grasped the perfect surprise and shyness. Oh, but big brother, what are you guys going to do? For 2 seconds, Zidingshan felt guilty for his stinginess. But looking at the young man who was standing with a blonde woman behind him, he sneered in his heart. It seems that this pretty boy is not as stupid as he appears. At his eye signal, a group of younger brothers have surrounded Tang Liu and Jinringsu. There was even a tendency to force the two into the alley. Zidingshan sneered, clenching his fists until they creaked. Have I warned you to be more careful in the future? He approached Tang Liu step by step, his smile becoming more and more ferocious. But unfortunately, you challenged my bottom line again and again. I am not a generous person, kid, so I decided to teach you a lesson. He came in front of Tang Liu and patted Tang Liu's shoulder with his big hand. But you should also thank me. After all, other people in this society are not as kind as me, just letting you suffer a little flesh and blood. He smiled carelessly, and his contemptuous malice was not concealed at all. Cherish this compulsory course. This is a very valuable experience. Tang Xiaobai Liu staggered very cooperatively, and his face turned pale under Zidingshan's threat. Zidingshan's eyes lightly swept over Jinringsu behind Tang Liu, and his eyes looked her up and down unscrupulously. Ignoring Jinringsu's frown, he looked at Tang Liu with disdain and said with contempt, I almost forgot that you are still a gigolo. Tisk, relying on women is simply hopeless. He raised his hand, wanting to slap Tang Liu's face, and then threw down a sneer. Today brother will teach you how to be a man, but his wrist was strangled by a slender jade arm halfway. Belated update, lying down, the dog author has been busy with final exams and preparing for production internships in the past half month. This chapter was originally for May Day, but the typing speed can't keep up. Lying down, but everyone just treat it as May Day. After all, this point should be bedtime, and it will be the next day when you wake up and open your eyes. Doj, see you tomorrow. Chapter 933 Be confident. Zidingshan looked in the direction of the hand and saw Jinringsu, who had raised her eyebrows and a beautiful and flamboyant face. She curled her red lips slightly, and smiled frivolously but elegantly. Even when she stood behind Tang Liu, she was still calm and decent with a hand stretched out to grab Zidingshan's wrist. It was obvious that she had been in a superior position for a long time. But obviously, Zidingshan did not take her seriously, so he naturally would not notice these. Moreover, compared with Jinringsu's arm, his arm was muscular and the other was as slender as a lotus root and white as jade. The contrast and confusion were too strong. Tang Liu stared at the place where Zidingshan was grabbed by Jinringsu, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. Zidingshan knew nothing about this. He just looked at Jinringsu playfully and sneered, Why, the beautiful woman wants to help your little lover? I'll tell you. However, before he finished speaking, a huge force that he could not resist at all came up from Jinringsu's hand that grabbed him. He felt a flash before his eyes, and his body suddenly became lighter. After a dizzy feeling of the world turning upside down, he felt the pain of falling heavily to the ground. He lay on the ground with his arms and legs spread out, looking at the clear blue sky, his face still in a state of confusion of doubting life. The younger brothers brought by Zidingshan didn't see what happened clearly. They only knew that the blonde woman swung her arms, and then their boss flew out. A group of younger brothers, Jinringsu, who easily threw Zidingshan out, did not stop. She stretched out her hand to support Tang Liu's shoulder, and the whole person flew up and kicked the closest one. The man had no time to react, and followed Zidingshan's footsteps. He was kicked and hit the wall of the alley, and slid to the ground with his chest and abdomen covered in pain. Jinringsu, who was still wearing 8-centimeter stilettos, landed lightly, raised her leg and then did another roundhouse kick, killing several more at once. At this time, Zidingshan finally got up from the ground. He was horrified to see several younger brothers flying out. Then, after seeing the younger brother whose nose was bleeding after being hit by Jinringsu's elbow, he immediately rushed over with a ferocious face. You bitch! Jinringsu didn't even turn her head back. After clamping one of them, she kicked Zidingshan in the chin with a sidekick, kicking him backwards. Not only did the younger brother whose arm was clamped by her scream in pain, but Zidingshan himself also screamed in pain, holding his chin and retreating repeatedly, feeling as if his teeth were about to fall out. Jin Ringsu moved quickly, kicking the person clamped in front of her away, and then caught up with Zidingshan in one step. Before he could react at all, she punched him in the eye socket. Zidingshan staggered back in pain, and before he could stand firm, he was kicked by Jin Ringsu again. This time, his whole body began to hurt. After glancing coldly at Zidingshan, who couldn't even stand steadily, Jin Ringsu turned around to deal with the others. In a moment, the large group of people brought by Zidingshan were lying on the ground in all directions, curled up in misery and groaning in pain. Zidingshan, who had recovered a little, saw this scene, and his eyes were bloodshot. And his mind was full of anger. For a moment, he didn't care about anything else and immediately rushed forward to take revenge. However, before that, the pretty boy he looked down on, who had been watching the show by the side, suddenly appeared in front of him like a ghost, and he didn't even see how the other party came. Then he kicked him on the knee with a crisp kick, using a little trick, and his body couldn't control it and fell to his knees. Zidingshan was not convinced, and immediately struggled to stand up again. But Tang Liu had already stepped on his shoulder, and the unimaginable force immediately trampled him to the ground, as if he was nailed to death and couldn't move. The young man leaned forward, resting his hands on his bent knees, and smiled at him harmlessly. It is not allowed to use martial spirits and soul power casually in the city, big brother. Even if you have the strength, you must not forget to abide by the law. Zidingshan, he felt that his actions now were completely in line with self-defense. But one thing that had to be admitted was that they were not opponents at all. Whether it was the blonde woman who easily dealt with their group of people, or the young man who just stepped on his shoulder and made him lie on the ground and unable to move, with a curved corner of his lips. This time, he really ran into a tough guy. Zidingshan's mind was blank with disbelief, and he still looked at Tang Liu viciously, the face that was always smiling, but so hateful. In such a humiliating posture, he still wanted to spit at Tang Liu fiercely, and continued to humiliate him stubbornly. You are a gigolo who can only hide behind women, a good-for-nothing gigolo. You can only rely on women to survive in this life. Tang Liu selectively filtered out the dirty words that came out of his mouth, and even listened to him patiently. Then he pulled his lips lazily and said, "Really? But what's wrong with being a gigolo? Just like now, are you richer than her or can you beat her? And, I have to correct you a little bit, about your previous sentence. You can only rely on women to survive in this life. Sorry, don't you have a mother?" Zidingshan choked. Tang Liu glanced at him lightly, and finally some contempt appeared in his eyes. He retracted his foot on Zidingshan's shoulder, but stepped on his wrist again before Zidingshan struggled. With a light twist, there was a crisp click sound, followed by Zidingshan's scream. "I don't eat from your house, how can you be so lenient, huh?" What's more, he laughed out loud, half squatted down and got closer to Zidingshan, patted his face with the ID book that he had taken out in his hand at some point, and whispered, "It's better than a guy like you who eats soft rice and does nothing." Zidingshan's reason was washed away by anger in an instant, and he looked at Tang Liu's expression, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Even the severe pain in his wrist was ignored for a moment. Tang Liu admired his gnashing teeth, and said with interest, "Did I touch your sore spot?" Which made Zidingshan even more angry, but also more frightened. Why? This pretty boy. As if he knows everything. And the next second, he caught a glimpse of the large gold-plated characters on the cover of the ID book in the young man's hand, and his pupils shrank immediately. Zidingshan's reaction naturally did not escape Tang Liu's eyes. He curled his lips and sneered, opened the ID with one hand, and showed it to Zidingshan. After making sure that he had a clear look, he took it back. "This time you met us, and no harm or loss was caused, so I can let you and the people you brought with you go. But if there is a next time, I think you should be clear about the Supervisory Bureau's handling of illegal monks." And he pointed diagonally upward with the ID book and sneered, "Next time before you take action, please pay attention to the surrounding situation. Do you really think the surveillance is a decoration? Or, you are so blatantly stupid, is there anyone who can cover you and make sure that you will be fine?" Zidingshan was terrified. No, we just had a bad idea for a moment, please forgive me." Humph. Tang Liu smiled. "Just remember this lesson, Zidingshan, remember the dog author has not yet adjusted. Guilty. Thank you to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow." Chapter 934, Everything is under control. "Xiao Liu," the woman's voice came. Zidingshan watched the young man who had just suppressed him so much that he could hardly breathe. He immediately changed his face to a well-behaved one, stood up quickly, turned around, and said to the blonde woman, "I'm here, sister." Jin Ringsu looked down and saw Zidingshan's wrist being stepped on. She frowned slightly and said, "You just..." Tang Liu immediately kicked Zidingshan's hand back a little, and said calmly, "It's nothing. I have already had a friendly exchange with this big brother." He said that it was all a misunderstanding, then he lowered his head and looked at Zidingshan with a smile. "Right, big brother." At the same time, his fingertips moved slightly, and Zidingshan's broken hand was quietly connected. It was done flawlessly. Zidingshan didn't notice anything because of the pain, but he was almost driven crazy by Tang Liu's different face. He propped up his body and barely sat up, then showed a smile that was uglier than crying. Yes, it was all misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, what else can he do? The pretty boy in front of him happened to be from the supervisory bureau. Not to mention him, even the people above them dare not mess with him. If he is not careful and is targeted by the supervisory bureau, he might be killed before the people from the supervisory bureau come to his door. So no matter how much loss he suffers now, he has to swallow it all. Jin Ringsu's eyes were light, and she glanced at Zidingshan's wrist inconspicuously, and a somewhat happy smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She nodded. "Is that so? Then we can go. I feel a little tired after walking around all day today." "Zidingshan, when you beat us up just now, I didn't see that you felt tired at all." Tang Liu had already walked over quickly to stand shoulder to shoulder with her, showing a big smile. "Okay, let's go back now." Zidingshan's heart was trembling, but he still tried to stand up, and waved to the two people who were going away. "You two take care, be careful on the road." Although neither Tang Liu nor Jin Ringsu paid any attention to him, this was also the best result for him, otherwise if anyone turned back, he would be scared to death. Zidingshan breathed a sigh of relief until Tang Liu and Jin Ringsu completely disappeared from his sight. Thinking back to what had just happened, he wanted to cry but had no tears. Who would have thought that someone from the Supervision Bureau would be willing to hang out with a rich woman to eat soft rice? No, who would have thought that a pretty boy who hangs out with a rich woman was actually from the Supervision Bureau? After seeing the documents that the pretty boy took out clearly, he almost had a heartbeat. Who can stand this kind of behavior of Lao Liu? He couldn't even tell the people above about what happened today. Otherwise, if the people above knew that he had provoked someone from the Supervision Bureau, even if he was not dealt with directly, he would not have a good result. Zidingshan couldn't afford to offend anyone, so he could only consider himself unlucky and went back with his brothers in disgrace. These are probably all the things that happened today. Tang Liu looked at Mengju and smiled slightly. Mengju's face showed no strange color, and he didn't even take his eyes off Tang Liu. His brain was working quickly to think. If everything the young man with a mysterious identity said was true, he also felt that the young man was probably not lying, because he could investigate the surveillance at any time, and he could completely infer whether the young man's words were true based on the young man's daytime movements. But if this is really the premise, then, the key item that attracted him here, Mengju moved for the first time in front of Tang Liu and Jin Ringsu. He took 2 steps forward, raised his hand and tapped it on the table. When he moved away, he left a thin movie ticket stub. So, this thing was also left on Zidingshan when you had a conflict with them. Mengju's eyes immediately fell on Tang Liu's face, not missing any micro-expressions on his face. However, Tang Liu's expression was exactly the same, always smiling calmly. No matter how good he was at psychology, he could not get any useful information at this moment. "I said, deliberately going to the western suburbs where there are few people and it is easier for them to act. Maybe it is not just to track them out." Instead, he was instantly distracted by the other party's words repeated for the second time. But before he could continue to think deeply, Tang Liu changed the subject and said with a smile, "Besides, I have had contact with Zidingshan more than once today." Mengju's eyes flashed, so when Kaiansi, Tang Liu did not comment, and then suddenly leaned forward a little, folded his hands on the table, supported his chin, and said, "It's late, let's stop talking today. Anyway, you know where I live now. If there's anything you want to know later, you are welcome to visit me." He suddenly raised his lips, and some blue light began to emerge from his deep eyes, which looked a little fascinating. "But I want to remind you," Mengju suddenly found that he could not move. Under the gaze of the young man's increasingly weird eyes, it was as if he had encountered a nightmare and lost all control of his body. His voice was like a whisper lingering in his ears in a dream, sometimes far away, sometimes near, becoming extremely unreal. Even if your profession is special, you can't just hack into the circuits of residential areas, destroy the external anti-theft nets of residents' homes, and other acts that damage public and private property. The color is disappearing, and everything is slowly falling into darkness. Until the end. Don't do it again next time. Only the young man's blue eyes are left. The air suddenly filled his lungs again, and Meng Zhu seemed to be dazed and immediately looked around. He stood outside the window, his hand still on the anti-theft net. The anti-theft net was intact. It seemed that he was about to break it open just now. But Meng Zhu obviously retracted his hand and looked through the window glass into the dark room, and couldn't help but slowly step back a few steps. Illusion? Or a spiritual monk? But all the previous feelings were so real. Meng Zhu's eyes were complicated and his thoughts were a little confused. In the end, he quietly blended into the night and left silently. And just as he walked out of the community, a clear sound of electricity was heard. The electricity that was originally hacked by him was suddenly restored at this moment. The lights illuminated the road again. Meng Zhu stood in the blind spot of the surveillance with a solemn expression. He looked deeply at the quiet community, turned and walked away. Tang Liu and Jin Ringsu, neither of them moved at the first time. Jin Ringsu looked at the movie ticket stubs on the table and said suddenly, "It's really strange, obviously both movie tickets are here with me, where did the one on that guy come from?" Tang Liu smiled, "Maybe, it was originally on Zidingshan." Under the gaze of the two, the movie tickets lying quietly on the table began to reorganize and deform in the three-dimensional mosaic-like blue light. When the blue light dissipated, what reappeared was a small black square object, a miniature brainwave jammer. Thanks to the friends who voted. See you tomorrow. Chapter 935 Teaching begins. Tang Wulin heard the familiar sound of the sharp wind again. He gradually woke up from his sleep, slowly opened his eyes, and lay in bed for a while. He immediately turned over, crawled to the window, lifted a corner of the bed curtain, and looked outside. Although the sky in the early morning was not completely bright, the figure of the young man dancing with a spear was still vigorous in the gray and white. The half-grown child suddenly lost all sleepiness, and the joy and excitement on his face were difficult to calm down. He quickly got out of bed, kicked off his slippers and trotted out. It was the Golden Dragon King who was still sleeping soundly and was thrown away by his action. The Golden Dragon King was about to curse, but he found that the culprit had already run away. He had no way to vent his anger when he got up, and he was extremely frustrated. Sensing the familiar smell outside, he immediately flew back to the quilt with the remaining child's body temperature, and rolled his tail to bury his entire dragon tightly. Tang Liu certainly noticed a brat coming, but he waited until he finished playing with the gun before he stopped and looked at the person standing next to him. Seeing him looking at him, Tang Wulin's eyes sparkled, and he called out expectantly, "Uncle." Tang Liu put his spear on the ground, smiled at him, and said, "I thought you would not come like yesterday." Tang Wulin's face immediately flushed. "Yes, sorry, I was sick yesterday morning." Tang Liu let go of his hand, and the blue-silver spirit emperor spear was still standing upright. "I know," he smiled, and then flicked his fingertips on the spear shaft lightly. Instantly, the spear turned into fragments of blue light and dissipated into the air. "Otherwise, you won't have the chance to stand in front of me today." Tang Wulin was still shocked by what he had just seen, and suddenly found that his eyes went black, and then a long wooden stick fell towards him. He was startled, but he subconsciously reached out to catch it and held it in his arms. Tang Liu looked at his stupid appearance and couldn't help laughing. Then he asked, "But, are you going to practice spear training with me in this outfit?" Tang Wulin realized that he was still in his pajamas. He looked down at the slippers on his feet, turned around and ran home in embarrassment. "All changed now." Tang Liu looked at the little guy's back and curled his lips lightly. Then he glanced at a certain place. A dark shadow flashed quickly in the corner. He retracted his gaze, smiled meaningfully, raised his hand and summoned the blue-silver spirit emperor spear again, holding it in his hand and turning it. Even though the sun hadn't come out yet, the transparent blue crystal-like spear body was still gorgeous. The golden veins interwoven like silk threads were even more beautiful and luxurious. "It's okay to take a look. Just don't be too surprised next time." It didn't take long for Tang Wulin to run out of the house again with a long wooden stick in his arms. This time he changed into clothes suitable for activities and sneakers. He ran to stand in front of Tang Liu, looked up at the handsome young man, His tender face flushed. I'm ready, little uncle." He really looked like someone who would like him. Tang Liu paused, then began to say, "The gun is the king of all cold weapons. Relatively speaking, this weapon is very simple to use. Even a person with no martial arts skills can use it well. Even on the battlefields of ancient times, ordinary soldiers holding guns could fight back and forth with sword masters. The saying 'an inch longer is an inch stronger' probably means this. But no matter what, this is also a weapon with a long history, and it also contains many skills. It is not easy to master it. Like any other weapon, it requires a lot of effort, and even unimaginable hardships." Tang Liu looked at Tang Wuolin. "Today is a peaceful society, and you don't need too many martial arts to ensure your own safety, so I won't teach you too many things. I just want you to treat it as a hobby. Of course, any learning is a process that requires hard work. I tell you this just to confirm with you one last time." Looking at his serious expression, Tang Wuolin also became a little nervous unconsciously. "Tang Liu, Tang Wuolin, are you sure you can endure the hardship and follow me to learn? If you shake your head, you still have a chance to go home immediately, otherwise you will have to get up so early every day to practice with me." For a 6-year-old child whose mind is not yet mature, facing an important decision like this is still a little too difficult. Tang Wuolin looked at the serious-looking young man with a confused face and opened his mouth. Unexpectedly, the young man who had a serious and even imposing face just now immediately put on a kind smile. His clear and laughing voice immediately smoothed out the slight uneasiness in Tang Wuolin's heart. "But today is the first time, I can take you to try it first. As for my question just now, you can think about it slowly. I have a long time to wait for you. And before I get your definite answer, as long as you can show up here on time every day, I will continue to teach you something. How about it?" Tang Wuolin looked into the young man's smiling and warm eyes, and the previous unreasonable panic disappeared without a trace. He nodded, revealing a smile full of energy and eagerness to try. Tang Liu was also infected by the sincere and pure smile of the little brat, and said with a smile, "Then watch me demonstrate it first, and follow me. The movements we are going to learn today are very simple." He turned his back to Tang Wuolin, holding the spear in his right hand, and his left hand behind his waist. The whole person stood there like a straight and tall pine tree. Then he suddenly took a step forward, and while turning sideways, he also raised his hand to stab the blue-silver spirit emperor spear forward. Tang Wuolin tightly grasped the long wooden stick in his hand, staring at the young man's every move. The young man continued to move, holding the spear that was originally stabbing forward, and suddenly swung it backwards 180 degrees. He was originally standing with his back to Tang Wuolin, but now he was facing him, but his left arm was still behind his waist, and he did not make any other movements. He was right, the current movements were all very simple. It was just that the movement of swinging the spear backwards just now was very slow. But from the back of his hand that was tightly holding the spear and the blue veins bulging, it can be seen that he used a lot of force that time. After that, the young man held the gun and swept it in front of him, thrust it upward, chopped it down, and finally stabbed it forward. Similarly, each time he drew the gun, it was extremely slow, but quite powerful. It can be seen from the steady tip of the gun without any trembling. After putting away the gun, Tang Liu looked at Tang Wuolin and asked, "Did you remember it?" Tang Wuolin nodded repeatedly. "I remember it." The smile on Tang Liu's face deepened. "Okay, then you do it yourself next time. However, the requirement is that you can only grasp the tail of the stick in your hand. Until you finish a set, the wooden stick will not tremble at all. This is your next goal." Thanks to the friends who voted. See you tomorrow. Guess what Tang Liu taught Tang Wuolin to do with a gun? Doge. Chapter 936 Xuantiangong 13 Pro Max Yuan Feng Blue. The length of a common spear is usually not shorter than the length from the foot to the fingertips when a person stands upright with his arms raised. The wooden stick that Tang Liu picked for Tang Wuolin was naturally chosen according to this standard. Therefore, Tang Wuolin had to hold the wooden stick that was taller than him and complete all the actions he just demonstrated according to his requirements. The weight of a solid long wooden stick is not light. If converted in the same proportion, it would be quite difficult for an adult to achieve the conditions he just mentioned if he did not have enough arm strength. Not to mention that Tang Wuolin was just a 6-year-old child. However, Tang Liu felt that he was still very kind. After all, he gave a hard wooden stick, not a soft long stick, which reduced the difficulty by more than a little. Looking at Tang Wuolin, who had already started to learn in a proper manner, A certain uncle smiled in his heart without any guilt. Then the next second, he grabbed the head of the spear and gently tapped Tang Wulin's knee with the butt of the spear. The step is wrong, try again. The second time, he raised Tang Wulin's hand holding the stick with his spear. Your hand is too low. Try again. The little guy still has some talent. However, since these movements are not difficult, after Tang Liu corrected him several times, Tang Wulin was able to perform a whole set of movements in a relatively standard manner. However, his hand was still shaking when he raised the stick. Not bad, Tang Liu praised generously. Next, try to control your wrist and stabilize the stick. At the same time, remember all the steps just now. The speed can be slower, but it can't be chaotic. Understand, it is still the beginning stage, and the excitement in the child's heart still occupy a dominant position. Maybe he actually hasn't realized what a boring process it will be in the future, but before that excitement fades away, he is at least still studying hard. However, spearmanship is just a cover. As long as Tang Wulin can do these movements well today, Tang Liu's goal will be achieved. He looked at Tang Wulin, who was trying to stabilize the shaking stick, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly, and then cast a hidden glance somewhere. After Mengju returned, he almost stayed up all night to investigate the surveillance in the western suburbs. If the movie ticket that really led him to discover the manipulator was not placed on Zidingshan during the violent conflict, then the conflict between the young man and Zidingshan in the western suburbs was actually unnecessary. But it still happened, so its intention is very intriguing. In this case, if the armed conflict did not lead him to discover the real manipulator of everything yesterday, then it can only be to guide him to pay attention to the location of the conflict. Western suburbs. What happened in western suburbs? Could it be that Meng Jusun had a guess in his mind, but there was no way to confirm it for the time being? He first meditated for a while to restore his energy, and after sorting out his thoughts, he sent a message to his contact person using internal encrypted communication. Coincidentally, at this time, a familiar figure appeared in a monitoring window on the computer screen. Mengju looked at the young man who quickly brandished a gun in the gray daylight of the early morning, and was a little sleepy. After staring quietly for a while, he got up, grabbed his coat and walked out. Some guesses, perhaps he can get confirmation later. So he returned to the community and hid in the dark to witness the whole process of the young man teaching the children. He also thought that it was no wonder that the young man would target Zidingshan. After all, the other party looked very familiar with the child. He had excellent eyesight, and because of years of training, he was very sensitive to the posture and movements of a person. People like them, whether walking or doing other things, the feeling is completely different from ordinary people who have no signs of training. Maybe it is a small detail that can't be seen or noticed at ordinary times, but in his eyes, it is probably like the difference between ordinary people with shaky steps and soldiers marching in a uniform manner. Yesterday in the hospital, he saw that Zidingshan had a problem at a glance. Looking at the young man in the distance, all his movements were neither big nor small, and because he deliberately slowed down the speed of the spear dance, it was hard to see how hard he was. But even if the young man's long sleeves covered his body, he could still see what kind of powerful body was under the other sweater based on the subtle changes in the folds and lines on the clothes. As a monk, he couldn't help but compare himself with himself and then draw a conclusion. He is not his opponent at all. He was a skilled assassin or killer specially trained by the Tang sect. A disciple with a level 30 cultivation in the sect could defeat an opponent above level 50 in close combat with his superb fighting skills. Not to mention a disciple like him who had graduated from the sect and was assigned a mission. Before this, he just thought that the young man was a cultivator with the ability to build an illusion or a spiritual cultivator. Such a cultivator was not easy to deal with, but he only needed a chance to get close to him to subdue him with one blow. The extraordinary blonde lady next to the other party, and even the suddenly appearing white tiger guard, although because of the illusion, he remained skeptical about the authenticity of the white tiger guard, seemed to prove this point. But now it seems that he should not think so. No, perhaps after the other party subdued Zidingshan, he should completely deny this judgment. It was just the pace of the young man's spear dance just now. Why did it look so much like a slow-down ghost shadow trail? Repeating it over and over again, Tang Wulin began to lose some physical strength. Holding a solid wooden stick that was much longer than his height, and holding the tail, his center of gravity was extremely off his body, causing his arm that was holding the stick to be extremely sore. But he didn't complain, nor did he have the intention of giving up. And looking at his expression, He seemed to have been immersed in it for a long time. Tang Wulin could of course feel the soreness in his arm, but strangely, he could ignore the influence of this discomfort and continue to do the movements, even though his hands were shaking badly. When did it start? It was probably the first time he completed the whole set of movements in a relatively standard way. Then, a warm airflow suddenly emerged in his lower abdomen, like a small snake? A bug? Or a golden dragon king? Anyway, it slowly crawled around his entire body from top to bottom. After that, his body seemed to be controlled by someone else, and he kept repeating those movements mechanically, over and over again. The warm airflow therefore kept flowing through his body, and even became stronger. But his body was still his own body, and there was no change, so his arms would still tremble like that. Tang Wulin was somewhat craving for the feeling of the warm current flowing through his body, so he didn't want to wake up. However, cultivation also requires a combination of work and rest. The sky gradually brightened, and the sun seemed to be about to rise from the east. So Tang Liu spoke and asked Tang Wulin to stop. Now look up to the east, slow down your breathing, and pay attention to my instructions. His words were like a distant echo in the valley, causing Tang Wulin to stop his movements immediately. While he was still confused about which direction was east, his body had already reacted on its own. There were naturally tall buildings to the east, but when he looked over there, it seemed as if he was seeing a piece of blue light, like a mirror flower and water moon. His sight was like a fish swimming through the waves, and then he saw the rising sun rising from below the sea level. Breathe. Tang Wulin subconsciously took a deep breath as Tang Liu spoke. At this moment, the warm current flowing through his body suddenly accelerated, like a whirlpool, as if it was going to suck something away. At the same time, a bright and noble purple light appeared in front of the rising sun in his field of vision. He seemed to see purple light rushing towards him, like a wisp of mist entering his eyes, leaving a warm feeling. Now close your eyes and exhale. Tang Liu's voice sounded again, and Tang Wulin subconsciously followed suit. After closing his eyes, the warm feeling in his eyes became more obvious, as if he was applying a hot towel to his eyes, which was indescribably comfortable. When the warm feeling dissipated, Tang Wulin opened his eyes again and found that the world in his eyes seemed to have become much clearer. However, the vision of the rising sun seen through the blue light just now disappeared, and all he could see was the tall buildings. He subconsciously looked at Tang Liu next to him, and happened to bump into the other's smiling eyes. Congratulations, little Tang Wulin, you are now a soul warrior who has learned the art of meditation. From now on, you can practice soul power and improve your cultivation at any time according to the art of meditation. Tang Wulin was stunned for a moment, then he said with joy, really? What's the name of my meditation? Tang Liu, Zhuan Gong 13 Pro Max Yuan Feng Blue. Tang Wulin, Mengju, who was spying in the dark. Thanks to the friends who voted. See you tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 937 Dual Identity. Tang Liu himself did not practice Zhuangbianguang, but this did not prevent him from studying and improving it. The original version of Zhuangbianguang emphasizes an endless cycle of life. When it comes to practitioners, it is just that they have slightly more endurance than other meditation techniques. Just like when Tang San competed with Meng Yiren, with Zhuangbianguang, Tang San was able to narrowly defeat Meng Yiren, whose soul power was one level lower than his, and immediately reached level 30 after the competition. The practice of a soul master is actually a process of constantly accumulating soul power. When the amount is sufficient, it can continue to enter the next level. However, Tang San was able to continue to break through the realm with Zhuangbianguang when his soul power was almost exhausted. This can only mean that while he was consuming, he must have had enough soul power to meet the requirements of the breakthrough. While consuming, new soul power was constantly generated through Zhuangbianguang. Those soul powers not only temporarily supplemented Tang San's needs at the time, but also raised the upper limit of his total soul power. So when his soul power recovered, he naturally became a soul master with a soul ring waiting for level 30. After Tang Liu's several improvements, Zhuangguang has been constantly developing the feature of Zhuangguang's endless life. Now in the 13th version, the strongest upgraded version, the main feature is that it can be practiced anytime, anywhere, and in various postures, almost bringing the endless life to the extreme. This means that soul masters who practice Zhuanshan Guang 13 Pro Max will have a passive ability to restore a certain amount of blue bars per second and permanently increase the upper limit of the blue bar in proportion. In the process of fighting, if you can grasp the degree of output soul power, you can even achieve no consumption of soul power. Of course, this is the most ideal situation, but soul skills that continuously consume, such as mental detection, when used alone, if they can just offset the recovery speed, it is really possible to achieve no consumption. As for the distant peak blue, it is purely because the color of the soul power cultivated by Zhuanshan Guang is very similar to it, and Tang Liu added it as a joke. But whether Tang Wulin can understand it or not, today's teaching was completely successful. Zhuanshan Gong and Ziji Demon Eye are introduced at the same time, and other Tang sect unique skills later will be easier. Later, that was Tang Wulin's own luck. After instructing Tang Wulin to go home and try to follow the soul power route he had just sensed, and meditate for a while to consolidate the results, Tang Liu immediately drove the little brat home to eat breakfast. When Tang Wulin came in from the door holding a long wooden stick, Tang Ziren and Langai were a little surprised, because the couple didn't hear Tang Wulin go out at all. This was done by the Golden Dragon King, who was sleeping soundly and hiding his merits and fame. When Tang Wulin got up from the bed rashly, he used his divine power to block the room of Tang Ziren and Langai. Only then did Tang Wulin complete the first day of training so smoothly. Otherwise, the master would have to spend time explaining the intention to Tang Ziren and Langai. But if the results of Tang Wulin were directly displayed in front of the couple, knowing that everything the master did was beneficial to Tang Wulin, they would not stop it, let alone raise questions easily, and would be very happy, and even actively drive Tang Wulin to continue to learn from the master. This is the incomplete summary of human nature by the Golden Dragon King after the last deep learning on the internet. Although it is his duty to help his master solve problems, he should not ask for rewards or rewards. But if his master knows his intentions, will he like him more and be closer to him? With this thought in mind, the Golden Dragon King happily entered his daydream. After Tang Liu asked Tang Wulin to go back, he did not stay outside for long. Of course, he did not look for Mengju, who was peeping. So when Mengju saw Tang Liu and Tang Wulin walk into the building one after another, he also chose to leave. Because it was almost time for him to go to the hospital for duty, it was still necessary to maintain his public identity for the time being. However, if he left later, he would see the silver-white heavy-armored soldiers coming to greet him. And the mysterious national master who was dressed in indigo came out again. The face of the national master was still covered with an impenetrable fog, and if you look closely, you can see the deep sky full of stars. The diligent national master has not forgotten that the long-awaited national sacrifice will be held soon. It is necessary to maintain the public identity. Master Imperial Master, do you need us to deal with the nearby surveillance? After escorting the people to the special bulletproof car, the White Tiger guard who served as the driver asked. No need. Tang Liu sat in the spacious back seat and looked out the window. What he saw was a surveillance camera on the roadside. It can't capture us. His tone was light, as if he was stating something that was very ordinary. The White Tiger guard also glanced in the direction of the surveillance camera. The angle of the surveillance camera was obviously able to capture them, and even their faces were very clear, although their faces were covered by armor or fog. That's what it meant. Then what the Master Imperial Master said can't capture. Obviously, it is not in the physical sense. The Master Imperial Master always has many magical methods. Wulin, come out for breakfast. After serving the last scallion pancake to the table, Lang Yu shouted. Coming. In a moment, Tang Wuling ran over from his small room. Coincidentally, Tang Ziren also came to the dining table with bowls and chopsticks. He glanced at Tang Wulin, then smiled and said, What happened? Why are you so happy today? Hearing this, Langai also looked at Tang Wulin and couldn't help laughing. Yeah, baby, you got up so early today. Did you encounter something good when you went out? Tang Wulin had already started to slurp the porridge that Tang Ziren had prepared for him. Listening to the two people's questions, he just smiled and didn't say anything. Tang Ziren and Langai were also people who respected children's privacy and did not continue to ask. The family of three was in a happy atmosphere and slowly had breakfast. While eating, Tang Ziren suddenly said, Wulin, you will go to school soon. Although you are born with full soul power and almost won at the starting line, don't be lazy because of this. Dad found a few meditation techniques for you yesterday. You can choose them later. Your mother and I will teach you the basics. After that, you will start practicing by yourself, okay? Hearing her husband's mention, Lang Yu also thought of what the couple discussed yesterday, and immediately said to Tang Wulin in a gentle and persuasive manner, "Your father is right, baby. Don't you want to become a powerful spirit master? Then you must work hard to practice towards this goal." Tang Ziren and Lang Yu actually did not have many requirements for Tang Wulin, they just hoped that he could grow up healthily. However, since their baby has the condition of innate full spirit power, the couple is still willing to urge Tang Wulin a little, at least not to waste such a good talent. It was Tang Wulin's next reaction that caught the couple off guard. "Thank you, Mom and Dad, but I have learned the meditation technique. I have been practicing it for a while just now." The little guy's face was full of pride. Tang Ziren and Lang Yu looked at each other in surprise. Tang Ziren's face became serious. "Wulin, are you serious? Have you really learned the meditation technique? Who taught you? Do you know what the meditation technique you learned is called?" Lang Yu also looked at Tang Wulin nervously. After all, meditation is closely related to the Soul Master's cultivation foundation and cultivation speed. If it is not done well, it will even affect the foundation. Even the innate talent of full soul power may be ruined. This is a serious matter, and the couple cannot help but take it seriously. Whether the talent is affected or not is secondary. The main concern is whether Tang Wulin's physical health will be affected. It is normal to feel nervous and worried about this. Tang Wulin recalled and said, "It was the uncle next door who taught me. He said that the meditation technique he taught me is called Zhuanshenguang." "Who are you, Oma KC? What blue?" Tang Ziren, ? Lang Yu, ? "I just arrived at the internship location yesterday, and when I checked in, I encountered the first setback of college students' internships, being robbed by my roommate." Smile. Other people's rooms are spacious, bright, clean and comfortable as soon as you enter the door. As soon as the dog author and his good brother entered the room, there were floors full of black footprints, broken cardboard boxes full of paper and various garbage, take-out boxes on the table, and toilets and bathrooms that were so dirty that they were unbearable to look at. Fortunately, I spent the whole day yesterday to clean it up so that it could be lived in. I cried to death. In short, the dog author has risked his life to summarize the internship experience for everyone. 1. If the internship unit arranges accommodation and knows in advance how many people will sleep, it is best to make sure that the dormitory you are about to move into is occupied by classmates who go to the same internship unit, and there are no other strangers. Then at least you can get a relatively clean and tidy place to live, and the cleaning is just to sweep away the dust and so on, instead of facing all kinds of disgusting things that make people mentally collapse but have no way to get angry. Thanks to the friends who voted, tomorrow the dog author will officially start work. Chapter 938 Tang Sect. Tang Ziren and Lang Yu knew very well that Zhuanshenguang came from the Tang sect because of the special nature of their previous work. The ancient sect was at its peak 10,000 years ago, but then quickly disappeared when the empire unified the world. Some people say that the Tang sect is a victim of the collision of two eras. Just like in the distant past, the Tang sect once became the #1 sect on the continent by selling hidden weapons. But this glory was extinguished at an unimaginable speed when the Sun Moon Empire brought soul-guided thermal weapons. 10,000 years ago, just when the development direction of the Tang sect was about to compete with the soul-guided technology of the Sun Moon Empire, the national teacher brought modern technology to end the soul-guided era at the speed of light. After that, the world has no way of knowing where the Tang sect went, but the legend of the Tang sect is still passed on by word of mouth. After all, no matter what, there are two shining stars who have amazed two eras one after another, and they both came from the Tang sect. But perhaps most people would think that the Tang sect has long become history, and is described in history books as the tears of the times, but Tang Ziren and Lang Yu's understanding of this was overturned a long time ago. Because they had contact with people from the Tang sect in the past. The current Tang sect, and it was precisely because of that Tang sect disciple that the couple were able to successfully leave the organization and live in seclusion elsewhere. Tang Ziren also asked the man out of curiosity why the Tang sect disappeared. All he got was one sentence. People who play with hidden weapons should not walk in the daytime. Tang Ziren was not very clear about what this sentence meant, but everyone in the entire Douluo continent must know what the Tang sect is famous for. It's one thing to just know about the Tang sect, but when things related to the Tang sect appear near them or on their precious son, the situation is completely different. That Tang Wei next door, isn't he from the supervisory bureau? Why is he suddenly related to the Tang sect? Could it be that the former Tang sect has become the current supervisory bureau? At night, Tang Ziren and his wife sat on the head of the bed, talking softly about everything Tang Wulin said in the morning. The 3 words Zhuangtiangong really shocked the couple. Lang Yu was not worried that Zhuangtiangong would have any bad effects on Tang Wulin's body, nor did she doubt that Tang Wei was teaching a fake Zhuangtiangong. After this incident, she was just worried that Tang Wei might have some other purpose in approaching Tang Wulin. After all, it was Zhuangtiangong. You could tell at once that it would not be passed on casually, otherwise detailed methods of cultivation could be easily searched on the internet. That's impossible. The history of the Supervisory Bureau is clearly hung on the walls of each Supervisory Bureau. It evolved after the Poseidon Pavilion was incorporated a long time ago. Tang Ziren denied his wife's guess, but did not completely deny it. However, it is possible that the Tang sect was incorporated into the Supervisory Bureau after that. Judging from the relationship between the Tang sect and Shrek Academy at the time, this guess is not unreasonable. It is said that the address of the revived Tang sect was in Shrek City. The reason why the Tang sect was able to be revived at that time was that the Shrek 7 devils of that generation all joined the declining Tang sect. In short, it seems that our neighbors should have no ill intentions. It is a good thing that Wu Lin can learn Zhuangtiangong. Don't think too much. As for the Tang sect, no matter what, it is more or less a trustworthy existence, not to mention that our neighbors are openly named the Supervisory Bureau. Tang Ziren comforted his wife. Lang Yu was indeed much more relaxed. After all, the Xingluo Empire National Monk Supervisory Bureau. That was in the era when the Douluo continent had not yet been cultivated by all the people, and ordinary people were like running dogs in the eyes of extraordinary people. The most solid Baqing. The most loyal vanguard. The most reliable door. Zidingshan woke up in the unbearable pain all over his body. He just groaned in pain, turned his head and found that he was still lying on the cold floor. Enduring the pain in his body, he sat up with a gloomy face. His memory stopped when he just walked out of the bathroom last night, and then fell into a blank. Although he didn't know how he fell here unconscious all night. But it was impossible that he fainted from the pain. So he looked around the room with a sharp hawk-like gaze. But everything was normal. The vigilance in Zidingshan's eyes gradually disappeared, and then a faint doubt arose. Could it be that he really fainted from the pain? The sudden vibration of the communication prompt interrupted his thoughts. He propped himself up and leaned over, reaching out to take the smart computer on the bedside. As soon as he saw it, his pupils trembled. Because the virtual screen showed multiple missed communications from last night to now. The time intervals varied, ranging from several hours to only 2 or 3 minutes. They were all from the same person. Zidingshan looked at the projection of the communication access and swallowed a mouthful of saliva with a little difficulty. Only after he was mentally prepared, he connected the communication as if he was ready to die. There was a silence over there that was enough to make his heart palpitate. He spoke tremblingly, "Boss." A chuckle came from the other side. Zidingshan's heart trembled along with it. The person on the other end of the communication seemed to know him very well, and it seemed that he could see what he looked like now. In a teasing tone with a hint of smile, he said, "Have I ever emphasized that you, as a loyal dog, must be available at any time, Dingshan?" It was a lazy, slightly hoarse and pleasant female voice. And no matter how intimate she called, no matter how seductive her deliberate pronunciation was, it still couldn't stop the cold sweat that suddenly soaked his clothes on his back. Zidingshan's teeth were trembling. "Boss, I'm sorry, SHH, the female voice on the other end of the communication stopped him with a smile. "I think there is no one who knows me better than you, Dingshan. You know what I like, right? So, how can you please me?" Zidingshan lowered his head and almost held the intelligent brain to his ears with both hands. Lowering her eyebrows and looking submissive, she sounded humble as if she was saying, "I know, boss. I'll be there soon." The female voice sounded as if she was smiling happily. Yet, good boy, the communication was disconnected. Zidingshan still kept his head down and held the intelligent computer. But there was a surging dark light in his eyes. Resentment, humiliation, unwillingness, fear, and one more. Expectation? Desire? Mengja looked at Zidingshan in the ultra-high-definition surveillance picture, taking in all the micro-expressions on his face. He turned around in his chair and took a sip of the newly poured champagne in his hand. Things became more interesting. Whether it was Zidingshan who was getting up and seemed to be going out in the picture, or the young man who hoped that he would smoothly see the scene. Mengju cast his eyes on the wall next to him, where there were two portraits he had just sketched. The strange thing was that the face of the male portrait seemed to be always blurred since it was drawn. So even the machine could not recognize the identity of the young man. But the female portrait. He looked at another screen. The ID photo on it was the blonde woman next to the young man. In the name column, it was written as Jin Ringsu. Chapter 939 Mistress. Based on the population of the entire Xingluo Empire, which occupies only 3 habitable planets in the Daoyang system, there are countless citizens with the same name. Not to mention, if we add the premise of from ancient times to the present, it is a number that cannot be investigated at all. Therefore, the name Jin Ringsu is a normal thing for anyone in the current empire to use. But he happened to be born in the Tang sect. 20,000 years ago, when that period of history that is quite distant from now has become an extremely brief section in the history books, their Tang sect disciples still know clearly that the Jin family girl recorded in the history books, who brought great trouble to the original founder of the Tang sect, was called Jin Ringsu. So, is this really just a coincidence of the same name? Mengju's eyes sank, and an indescribable sense of absurdity spread in his heart. That was 20,000 years. Not 2 years, not 200 years. It was a full 20,000 years. Even in this age of cultivators, the most outstanding cultivators in the records can only live to about 500 years old at most. Humans are not like soul beasts, and their lifespan is naturally limited. Since the national teacher taught people all over the world to practice, the average age of humans has suddenly reached nearly 200 years old, which is equivalent to everyone living an extra life. For the human species, it is already a long enough period of time. 20,000 years. That is even more unimaginable. According to current knowledge, unless it is a soul beast, it is impossible for other species to live for such a long time. Therefore, the speculation that the blonde woman may be the Jin family girl 20,000 years ago seems to be completely untenable. But he just feels absurdly that this absurd speculation is so ridiculous that it is really true. Mengju pursed his lips tightly and looked at the information he found from the internal network. It wrote all kinds of Jin Ringsu's identity information, and even clearly marked where she is currently working. It is a new company called Shixin Zuanmi Technology Company, Limited that has never been heard of before. Mengju checked the intranet again, and only found some superficial information such as the registered address, registration time, and legal person. What was useful to him at the moment was to continue to check the legal person named Teen Tang, who was so perfunctory that it was obviously a fake name. Mengju was prepared for the fact that he would not find anything, but he did not expect that the final result was really nothing. Even the internal network of their Tang sect only found the fake name Teen Tang. That's it. Except for that fake name. There was nothing else. Even though he was a very professional person, a look of astonishment still appeared on Mengju's face. But then his eyes became deep again. Because everyone knows that legal person is a thing that cannot be faked. Because the laws of the empire cannot be trampled upon. But even under such strict prerequisites, this company called Ten Heart Mysterious Technology Company, Limited was successfully registered and established with such a perfunctory pseudonym. Either that pseudonym Teen Tang is indeed a person who exists, but he is not within his current authority to contact. Or Mengju subconsciously cast a glance at the clear sky outside the window. I don't know if it is because of the upcoming national sacrifice and the blessing of the national teacher. The weather has been so sunny and warm in recent weeks. His fingers moved flexibly and exited the internal network of Tangman. At a speed that is almost seeking benefits and avoiding harm. So, it is the background of this company. It is so powerful that it doesn't need to care about these at all. Teen Tang can be a pseudonym. But if necessary, it can also be a real person. After all, in the final analysis, laws are not natural. They are made. In fact, just like him, except for the identity of a doctor on the surface, everything he has is also illegal in this society. But that is also on the surface. Perhaps, there will be another set of laws that are exclusive to those who are not open to the public. This involves many aspects, and even the considerations that the person sitting at the top position cannot be known to others. So no matter what step 10 Heart Mysterious Technology Company, Limited took, he must not follow this line to investigate. He is not qualified to investigate. Therefore, correspondingly, Jin Ringsu and the young man. He can continue to investigate. Perhaps when he saw the White Tiger Guard, he should understand this truth. Then kill all curiosity. Zidingshan was anxious to go out, but he didn't forget to find her little brother of the healing department to help deal with the bruises on his body. Especially the purple circle around the eyes. The little brother of the healing department under his command was not very good, but at least he faded the bruises, but the pain was not reduced. But now the pain is secondary. He just needs to ensure that he appears in front of that person with a flawless appearance. Because no one likes their beloved toy to suddenly look bad because of a flaw. Even if it is possible, it can't be said to be very beloved. But as a plaything, you must have the consciousness of a plaything. The only purpose of a plaything is to do everything in its power to please its owner and make him happy. Otherwise, Zidingshan's eyes were dark and unclear. He stood at the main entrance of the building in front of him for a long time, and finally looked up at the sign on the door. He took a deep breath before walking inside. The steps he took were full of a feeling of being ready to die. He didn't want to make that woman angry. No one wanted to make that woman angry. Because that woman, the woman named Lang Yulei, was a complete lunatic. Wang Zhe. Xingluo people only knew that this was a chain breakfast shop. The dining hall on the first floor, the private room on the second floor. On the third floor, Zidingshan came to the third floor without any obstacles. And there was only one room on the entire third floor. He easily passed the access control, as smoothly as countless times before. But when the door opened, the obstruction was gone, and the faint sound of lewdness suddenly came into his ears. Zidingshan's face instantly became extremely ugly, as black as the bottom of a pot, and even a little scary. There was a kind of rage in his eyes that was hard to understand. He strode in like a man who was eager to catch a woman committing adultery. He was familiar with the place, as if he was at home. He walked through what looked like an office and finally came to the door of a residential area. The unbearable sound became clearer and clearer. But it seemed to be coming to an end. His face became darker and darker, and then he grasped the door handle and pushed it open with force. The lavishly decorated room was filled with a strange and strong smell of hormones. The naked man knelt respectfully beside the luxurious bed, like a doll placed there on purpose, well-behaved and quiet. But he was obsessed with a woman with creamy skin in the gauze on the bed. His eyes were full of undisguised desire and enthusiasm, panting. His skin was sweaty, like a male dog in heat. His ugly posture was unbearable to look at. The woman leaned against the head of the bed, and beads of sweat also hung on her fair neck. The thin blanket covered her body, leaving only her long and slender legs outside, attracting the attention of others, making people sigh and those with impure thoughts swallow their saliva. She pinched a lady's cigarette with her fingertips, and the scarlet light flickered. Don't be locked up, don't be locked up, don't be locked up. Humble Dog Author Online Prayer JPG. Chapter 940 Wang Zhe. Zidingshan's sudden intrusion naturally attracted her attention. She raised her eyebrows and then exhaled a puff of smoke. Suddenly, that charming and enchanting face was even more gorgeous in the haze. At the same time, it was also evil and awe-inspiring, easily provoking other people's unbearable delusions. Zidingshan felt his breath choked, but the strange man beside the bed was really an eyesore at the moment, and everything reminded him from time to time what had just happened in the room. Then the rage ran wild in his blood vessels until it rushed into his lower abdomen and gave birth to an unknown evil fire. But the woman laughed at this moment without knowing what was good for her. You are a step late, Dingshan. So I decided to punish you a little. You are no longer the only one during this period of time. How about it? Are you satisfied with this decision? These few words made the fire burn more vigorously, as if fuel was poured on it. Zidingshan bit his cheeks tightly, and the anger seemed to burst out of his eyes as if it was about to become substantial. He stared at the strange man kneeling beside the bed, wishing he could cut him into pieces and eat his flesh and blood. But he still subconsciously did not dare to cast any disrespectful glances at the woman on the bed. After reacting, all the anger subsided again. And just at this moment, the woman's half-smile voice came faintly. Of course, I know you always put yourself in the right position. Right, my good dog. Zidingshan was awakened from his anger, and when he met the woman's deep gaze, he immediately lowered his head, and cold sweat broke out on his back. A plaything must have the awareness of being a plaything. No matter how much it is cherished by the owner, it is still a lowly plaything in essence. He lowered his head. I know, boss, and after understanding this, it was a great humiliation for him. Because the woman smiled, as if she was very satisfied with his obedience. However, the smile did not reach her eyes at all. She said as a reward, I hope you always have such self-awareness, Dingshan. Otherwise, I will feel very distressed. You should know that it is because you are the most obedient one that I can keep you around for so long. As long as you are obedient, I can do my best to meet any of your requirements. But it is you who made a mistake today, so I will give you a small punishment. This will not happen again. Dingshan lowered his head even lower, and an unspeakable feeling of irritation ran rampant in his heart, but he had to endure it because of timidity and fear, and he felt extremely aggrieved. He still had to respectfully, I know, thank you, boss. A trace of sarcasm quickly flashed across the woman's eyes. The man who stood in front of the door with his head down, all his little thoughts were actually nowhere to hide. But she pretended not to know, crushed the cigarette butt, and waved to him, come here, help me bathe. With just this simple movement, the thin blanket slid down her shoulders, revealing the even more alluring scenery below her collarbone. Dingshan walked over in a hurry, and his breathing inevitably quickened. He held the woman horizontally in his arms, and used his broad body to cover her exposed body tightly. He turned his back to the strange man beside the bed, not revealing a single bit of her body to the strange man. The woman smiled brightly, as if she was very satisfied with Dingshan's performance. She put her arms around his neck, and reached out to scratch his chin gently, which was very tempting. As Dingshan's Adam's apple rolled, he heard the woman in his arms whispering in his ear, the obedient dog should be rewarded. I'll leave that guy to you. How about it? There is no fourth person in this room, so it is very clear who she is talking about. Dingshan looked down at the woman's slender jade fingers that were casually unbuttoning his chest. His eyes gradually darkened, hiding the cruelty that flashed in them very well. Thank you, boss. Tang Liu retracted his gaze to the car window. The white tiger guard who was driving noticed this scene through the rearview mirror and said at the right time, Master State Master, are there any arrangements next? The national sacrifice in the near future has been basically arranged, and there will be someone to follow up on the venue layout and other measures. As the leader of the national sacrifice, the state master only needs to wait for the national sacrifice to arrive and preside over the ceremony on the day of the national sacrifice, meaning, Tang Liu is basically in a free state without any affairs now. But when the master state master is not idle, he is still very busy. Look, he went out early this morning and didn't start his return journey until nightfall. Tang Liu, arrangements? Generally speaking, there will be no serious arrangements at this point, especially for people like us. Or do you want me to take you to nightclubs and bars? Yo, White Tiger Guard, usually when there are only his own people around, Tang Liu is too lazy to cover his face, so the two White Tiger Guards in the front row can catch a glimpse of the slightly curved lips of his own national teacher through the rearview mirror. He crossed his legs in the spacious back seat, sitting like a big boss. Leaning back on the soft chair back, his expression is very comfortable, and his enchanting eyes are slightly narrowed. Like a lazy cat. It's at this time that he doesn't look like a national teacher. But it is precisely because of this unfair look that the sense of distance of the identity of national teacher is suddenly reduced, so the White Tiger Guards, not only the White Tiger Guards, but all the own people, never regard the national teacher as a god. It is also difficult to regard a national teacher as a high and mighty god. Even if the national teacher himself is far more powerful than a god. The White Tiger Guard still said respectfully, Master Imperial Master, we will take you back now. Tang Liu neither agreed nor objected, but raised his hand and pointed to the middle of the driver's seat. Take this road. The in-vehicle system started automatically under an inexplicable force, projecting a virtual navigation image on the front window. The green line extended all the way forward along the current coordinate point. The White Tiger Guards took a look, replied yes, and started the car. The navigation voice worked diligently. There are thousands of roads. Safety first. The vehicle drove slowly on the road. The scenery on both sides receded in the window, and the dim light and shadow of the street lights passed by. The engine sound made the car very quiet. The White Tiger Guard in the main driver's seat drove honestly, and the White Tiger Guard in the co-pilot's seat sat upright. Tang Liu in the back seat crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and tapped his elbows with his fingertips continuously. I don't know what he was thinking. Silence all the way. Until a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and said, Stop the car. The White Tiger Guards reacted quickly and parked the car by the side of the road. Then he looked through the rearview mirror at the blue Imperial Master behind him. Tang Liu looked at somewhere outside the window, and the corners of his lips curled up inadvertently. The next arrangement is right there. The two White Tiger Guards looked out the window together. Following the Imperial Master's gaze, they saw a building hidden in the darkness. The 3-story building was still lit, so they could clearly see the sign hanging on the main door. Wang Hey. Don't lock me up, don't lock me up, don't lock me up, Kiu, you're so hot, please, please. Chapter 941 Abnormal Magnetic Field. The White Tiger Guard's hearts froze at the same time. So the Imperial Master designated the route just to bring them to this place? The sudden sound of the car door closing brought the two men back to their senses from their heavy thoughts. They subconsciously looked back and found that the Imperial Master was no longer in the car. They immediately unbuckled their seat belts in a hurry, opened the car door and rushed across the street. As a result, everyone stood under Wang He, but still did not see the blue figure. When the two White Tiger Guards were full of questions, they suddenly saw the green light on the pedestrian crossing not far away, and the blue figure walked slowly along the zebra crossing from the opposite side of the road. When he approached, he raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "You two are very brave. You don't use the zebra crossing and cross the road directly. Don't you take the traffic rules seriously, White Tiger Guard?" "No, my Lord Imperial Master. Is the focus now on traffic rules? You brought us directly to the nest of the target of surveillance in the past few days." Tang Liu said disdainfully, "Tisk, I don't know how you two passed the selection of the White Tiger Guards, they don't seem very smart." White Tiger Guards, the word wronged was clearly written on the silver-white cold-toned metal tiger heads of the two White Tiger Guards. Then they all looked fiercely at the Wang He next to them, and touched the blasters on their waists. Since the Grand Master brought them to the target's lair, he must not intend to wait and wanted to wipe them out in one fell swoop. The hateful criminals caused them to be disliked by the Grand Master, and they must be taught a lesson later. The two White Tiger Guards were so aggressive that they were about to kick open the door of Wang He and rush into fight. As a result, Tang Liu passed by them and walked towards the dark alley next to Wang He. He looked at them inexplicably, and said strangely, "Why are you two standing here? Standing in front of someone else's lair with such a big fanfare, and wearing such conspicuous armor, you are afraid of not alerting the enemy, right, White Tiger Guards?" The blue eyes of the two tall soldiers dimmed several degrees at once, and they followed the Imperial Master with their heads drooped. Aggrieved. However, the White Tiger Guards of Big Cat aggrieved Jif were still conscientious. After entering the dark alley, they immediately protected the Imperial Master in the middle. One was responsible for clearing the way in front, and the other was responsible for keeping an eye on the situation behind at all times. Even though the Imperial Master's ability did not require them to do so. The helmet has built-in night vision and thermal imaging functions, so darkness cannot be an obstacle for the White Tiger Guards. However, even though they knew that the Imperial Master was not an ordinary person, the White Tiger Guards still turned on the flashlight on the armor to illuminate the road ahead. The alley was deep, with trash cans on both sides, exuding a not-so-pleasant atmosphere. The armor of the White Tiger Guards is also equipped with air purification and filtration functions, which is enough to ignore most harsh environments. Looking at the Grand Master who was only wearing thin clothes, the White Tiger Guard behind him rummaged through his belt and silently handed him a handkerchief. "Tang Liu." He sighed softly and said thank you. Although he still felt that the two White Tiger Guards were not very smart, after all, they were well-intentioned, and Tang Liu had no reason to refuse. So even though he no longer needed to rely on breathing to maintain his life, he still covered his mouth and nose with a handkerchief to pretend. After receiving the handkerchief, the White Tiger Guard was so happy that he flew. "No, you're welcome, Grand Master. This is what I should do." Suddenly, a text message popped up on the screen inside the helmet, from the White Tiger Guard in front. White Tiger Guard, soon the message came again, "You dog." Then the message bombarded, "This is what I should do. I will do these little tricks. Conspicuous bag. I despise you." He immediately retorted, right. I won't say who is jealous. Could it be that someone failed to talk to the Grand Master? No way. Rubbish. They almost turned on the voice output and then fought each other offline. Tang Liu, the Grand Master, could no longer bear it, and knocked on the metal skulls of the two big cats through the void, one for each, with a loud clang. "Stop it, and work hard." Although it was a silent argument in words, the Grand Master could read his mind. Even if he didn't take the initiative to use it, the intense brain-wave activity of the two big cats next to him still made his ears buzz. Tang Liu took a step with his long legs, bypassed the White Tiger Guards in front, and accelerated to the depths of the alley, not wanting to waste any more time. The two white tiger guards had already wilted with guilt, and now seeing the Grand Master leaving them and walking away quickly, they immediately trotted after him. They didn't forget to glare at each other, even though their helmets were the same cold and they shouldn't have any expression. The alley soon came to the end, and after turning a corner, they were completely behind a building of Wangshuzhe. According to the design of ordinary restaurants, such places are almost always connected to the back kitchen. The swill bucket quietly placed by the door undoubtedly confirmed this. Tang Liu stopped at the bend of the alley, still covering his mouth and nose with a handkerchief, his eyes slowly wandering over the scene in front of him, without saying a word. The white tiger guards, who had undergone rigorous training, also smelled a hint of unusual at this moment. This alley, which looked normal, now added a bit of gloom because of that unusual feeling. The two white tiger guards subconsciously became alert, holding the blaster rifles on their waists tightly, and stood by in a posture ready to launch an attack at any time. Tang Liu finally withdrew his gaze from the dark scene in front of him, and said with a strange smile on his face, "What you are wearing is the crystallization of the Empire's top technology. Do you want to try to find the what I see nearby?" The two white tiger guards were startled, their eyes subconsciously patrolling the empty dark alley in front of them. However, no matter whether it was night vision or thermal imaging, they did not find anything wrong. After a moment's silence, one of the white tiger guards said, "My lord, I don't understand." Tang Liu curled his lips. "In the latest update, the Academy of Sciences installed a magnetic field detection system in your armor. Why don't you use it now?" The white tiger guards looked at each other, and then turned on the new function that was recently installed and seemed to have no use at ordinary times. However, within a moment, the sensors on the armor detected abnormal signals. A white tiger guard said, "Abnormal magnetic field fluctuations have been detected nearby." Another followed closely, "The abnormal magnetic field signal seems to be moving slowly, approaching us." Just as he finished speaking, the image on the inner screen of the helmet displayed through the new system showed that the abnormal magnetic field signal just passed through him. The white tiger guard shuddered for no reason and subconsciously took a step to the side, watching the abnormal magnetic field continue to move. White tiger guard, Cyrillic lettered X. White tiger guard, my mother tongue is speechless. Chapter 942 Unknown Part. The scene in front of him was made up of countless fine, non-intersecting lines, and those were magnetic flux lines. The abnormal magnetic field in his sight was like a single magnet, moving aimlessly in the vast magnetic field of the planet, and only the magnetic flux lines that kept bending as it moved could prove its existence. But in reality, there was nothing there. And why did the distorted shapes of those magnetic flux lines sometimes look so much like a person? It was just that the structure and proportion seemed to be a little wrong, and there was an indescribable sense of disharmony. The white tiger guard suppressed the fear that was creeping up in his heart, because after the abnormal magnetic field passed them, it went straight to the blue Imperial Master. He warned, "Master Imperial Master, be careful." However, the abnormal magnetic field suddenly stopped about 3 steps in front of the blue Imperial Master, and seemed to disappear in an instant, and all the changes in the magnetic flux lines returned to calm. It was not until 3 seconds later that it reappeared, but began to slowly retreat. The white tiger guard watched all this with confusion and vigilance, with a blaster already in hand, ready to fire at any time. The abnormal magnetic field was seen passing slowly in front of them, and stopped beside the back door of Wangshuzhe. Then, it seemed to disappear suddenly as before, and started to move again 3 seconds later. But this time, it changed the direction and wandered. It no longer approached where they were. After a long silence, the white tiger guards finally spoke, "Sir, what is that?" Although the Lord State Master did not have their equipment, they still keenly discovered that the Lord State Master's line of sight was always following somewhere. Then the Lord State Master smiled and said, "Want to know?" They looked at each other for a while, and nodded in unison. Being assigned to be beside the Lord State Master, in addition to protecting him, they were also His Majesty's eyes. And the current situation was obviously enough to be reported urgently. "Then take off your helmets, and I will give you a pair of new eyes." The smile on Tang Liu's mouth was mysterious, but it could be called bad. The armor of the white tiger guards is super sophisticated nanotechnology, with countless nanorbits, forming a strong armor that could withstand missile explosions without activating any defense measures. If the defense module or force field is activated, or even various field generation devices are assembled through nanorbits, Even nuclear bomb explosions can be blocked. To do so is naturally to protect the safety of every white tiger guard in all aspects, because not every white tiger guard is a cultivator with a high level of cultivation. Most of them are actually just ordinary people with a certain level of cultivation and a spiritual power level exceeding A level. So in fact, without the order of a member of the royal family, no white tiger guard is allowed to remove the armor on his body without authorization. Even the national teacher himself does not have the authority to let the white tiger guards remove the armor. Because no matter how advanced the technology is, it takes time for nanorobots to cover the whole body to form an indestructible armor and transform into a strategic weapon of the ultra-small metro level. Even if the time required is less than 1 second. But for a cultivator with a high level of cultivation, these few milliseconds are the best chance to kill an unrivaled white tiger guard. But the State Master does not need this authority. Any authority in this world is meaningless to the State Master. Anyway, the State Master does not care, and the State Master can just force himself on you. What does it mean to be reluctant but willing? The white tiger guard now has an inexplicable sense of shame of being reluctant but willing, blushing and heart beating. God knows that these tough guys who are 188 centimeters tall, who can drive a starship metro to destroy a planet in a minute, and who can fight against the extreme Douluo with their bare hands, and who can't blink even when the Star Destroyer is on their foreheads. Why do they have such inexplicable psychological activities? And to be reluctant but willing, you have to move twice to show a half-hearted look. But now their bodies are completely out of control, and they can't even tremble with their pupils. It's so funny, they can't refuse at all. They could only watch the Grand Master approaching, and then, amid a piercing alarm sounding from inside the armor, all the nanorobots that formed the helmet were torn apart by an inexplicable force, revealing their faces that were both terrified and somewhat shy. They couldn't blame them, it was really the Grand Master's face. Well, that's it. The white tiger guards couldn't understand why they could be so girly. The indescribable tension reached its peak when the Grand Master's long, bony fingers reached out and lightly touched their eyes. The Grand Master smiled as if he suddenly realized something. Oh, right. One thing I forgot to say just now. After you have these new eyes, you have to be a little mentally prepared for everything you see in the future, because, he paused suddenly at this point. The smile that followed was definitely not kind. Forget it, you'll know when you see it yourself next. He gently passed his hands in front of the two white tiger guards with his sword-like fingers. Are you ready? Faintly, it seemed as if divine light passed through the surface of the white tiger guard's eyes along with his fingertips. Then, welcome to this new world that is gradually becoming complete. I met a woman. A very beautiful woman. So beautiful that I felt like I had lost my soul. She just beckoned me, and I followed her obediently. She took me to an unknown place, which looked like her boudoir. She just looked at me by herself. Her eyes seemed to be sizing up some goods. My confused heart finally became uneasy because of this. Because I saw her undressing without any shame, lying naked in front of me, and my body unconsciously moved closer to her. And almost impatiently tore and took off my clothes. When I pounced on her with an action that I found ridiculous, I finally realized I seemed to have lost control of my body. The uneasiness reached its peak when I saw my body asking her for a kiss. I resisted but knew it was futile. The uncontrollable physiological reaction once made me despise, hate, and disgust myself. But my body seemed to be invaded by the devil, and it wanted to enjoy and indulge without any cover. Fortunately, the woman did not let me touch her successfully after all. She sneered and panted. After struggling with me and sweating, she kicked me off the bed. I knelt unconsciously. But I couldn't take my eyes off her face that was blurred in the smoke. Then someone kicked the door open. I was panicked and ashamed. But it was at this moment I saw myself in the mirror beside the bed. I saw that familiar face with such an obsessed look. It was like a wild dog in heat, unbearable to look at. And I hated it so much. But it seemed like I was trapped in my body, like a bystander spying on everything. My brain was blank at that moment. Then fear grew from the blankness. The man who kicked the door in took the woman away. She said, "The obedient good dog should be rewarded. I will leave that guy to you. How about it?" He heard the man answer, "Thank you, boss." He was left kneeling like an animal, trapped in this body, and gradually eaten away by panic. Later, I was dragged away by the man, and he treated me like a dead dog. The cold invaded my limbs, and the pain penetrated deep into my bones. I seemed to have become smaller. It seemed that I could feel my body again. But why did they seem to be no longer in the original position? The world tilted, and the man with a gloomy face tilted too. Where else would he take me? I seemed to see the sky again, but only for a moment. Then the sour, salty slurry drilled into my mouth and nose, filling my lungs and stomach. My world fell into darkness. But why is it so crowded? It's so crowded. It hurts. It hurts so much. 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 Happy Dragon Boat Festival, my friends. The dog author will finish his internship on the 7th of next month. The internship at this unit found by the school is so tiring. The dog author has no chance to slack off and write. He falls asleep as soon as he returns to his dorm every day. I have written 5 chapters on QQ search. Please don't dislike it. I haven't fully explained how the plot will go in the future. The dog author is still working hard. After the internship is over, it's time to work hard. The dog author, Skinny Shiba Inu. Before getting the internship certificate, I work from 8 to 5 without complaint and dare not say a word. The dog author, Strong Shiba Inu. After getting the internship certificate and credits, I can't even get into this crappy class. Dodge, thank you to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. The dog author is still working hard. Oh grave, oh acute. Chapter 943 Horrible Thing. It hurts, like a bellows that has been out of repair for a long time. The hoarse tone suddenly entered the ears after the national teacher withdrew his hand. It hurts, then in the next second, the groan of someone unknown suddenly exploded like a booming sound, with strong resentment, unwillingness, and anger, exploding in the ears at the top of his lungs, not only frightening, but also making people dizzy. The White Tiger guards subconsciously looked in the direction where the creepy sound came from, and then they felt their hearts tighten, and their brains seemed to have completely lost the ability to think at that moment. The instinct to avoid harm engraved in the bones of living things was almost infinitely magnified at this moment, and the fear of unknown things reached its peak at the same time. The White Tiger Guards were undoubtedly the best soldiers in the entire empire. They had seen the bodies of people who died in miserable and terrifying ways with their own eyes, and they should not have any fear. But they were not afraid of corpses because they knew that corpses were not threatening at all, not even as good as 3-year-old children. But when the concept of corpses in their cognition was so clear that they could move like ordinary people, the fear brought by the absurdity of having one's cognition suddenly shattered, no matter how brave a person is, can remain calm. Seeing the corpse move a little, normal people would feel their scalp tingling, and their hearts would skip a beat at that moment. And the scene in front of them made every cell in their body scream to run away immediately. I don't know if it can still be called a human, or even a corpse. In short, its limbs are twisted and soft, and the joints are twisted abnormally, like a puppet with prosthetic limbs that someone has casually manipulated. Thighs, knees, elbows, each of them has deep and terrifying scars, as if someone had forcibly cut them off with a knife, and kindly left a strand of intact flesh so that they would not fall off the torso. What makes people's backs cold the most is its head. The head is bent almost 90 degrees to one shoulder. With its drooping steps, it shakes weakly again and again. The White Tiger Guards finally understood the reason for the sense of disproportion they had felt when they could only see the abnormal magnetic flux lines. This made them even more nervous, and cold sweat began to drip down their foreheads, but they didn't realize it. Only their strong psychological quality supported them, and they didn't immediately take out their blasters and shoot the unknown wandering creature. It hurts, it was still murmured in pain. Then it wandered around and turned around, with empty and almost completely white eyes looking at them. The White Tiger Guards clearly saw that the monster seemed to pause for a moment. Then, as if it was blurred in front of their eyes, the next moment there was no trace of the thing in their sight. But before they could think, they didn't give them any time to observe the surroundings. It was just driven by the combat quality engraved in their bones that they subconsciously turned their heads to look in other directions to make sure that the threat was always under their observation. Just like that, they were defenseless and came face to face with a terrifying wandering creature. The head bent at 90 degrees, and the horribly twisted, inhuman body were almost completely on top of them. A deafening, broken voice exploded in their ears. It hurts, it was it crying blood. Or perhaps, it was a warning of a attack. An indescribable chill quickly invaded the body. The terrifying thing in front of them seemed to be a piece of ultra-low temperature ice, which could instantly make the limbs of those who approached stiff and unable to move. At the same time, it seemed that something was growing in the body, rustling, like something was wriggling in the blood vessels, crawling through every corner of the body. It stretched the organs, filled the lungs, and blocked the throat tightly, and then slowly clenched the heart. The chill spread throughout the body, and the white tiger guards even felt a breath of death approaching. At this time, it was too late to pull out the blaster to fight back. The indescribable thing seemed to have replaced their bodies, making them feel like dolls stuffed with cotton wool and straw. They no longer had a sense of control over themselves. So the simple action of reaching out to draw a gun was now as difficult as ascending to heaven. The body was no longer their own. The feeling of being gradually occupied by an unknown thing was still reflected in their minds clearly. Perhaps when the body was completely occupied, it was the moment of death. Fortunately, there was a third person present who would not watch all this happen. The blue figure did not know when it appeared behind them. It was just like the terrifying wandering thing that suddenly disappeared just now and suddenly appeared beside them. He raised his hand and pressed their shoulders. Warm power flowed from his palm and poured into the body, dispelling all the abnormal coldness. "Command," the national teacher beside him said softly, and his new eyes seemed to see a hidden golden light flashing at that moment. So the next second, the terrifying thing had completely disappeared. The Grand Master stopped controlling their armor, and the Nanorobits covered their cheeks again, forming a majestic tiger head helmet. Similarly, their own vision was blocked. It seemed that they could no longer see the strange thing just now. The white tiger guard took several breaths in the armor, and then asked in shock, "My lord, what on earth is this?" The blue Grand Master had put down his palms on the shoulders of the two men, and there was not much expression on his face. He said lightly, "Nothing special, I just opened your eyes to let you see the true face of the abnormal magnetic field with your own eyes. But the disadvantage is also here. In common sense, ordinary people can't see them, and they can't see you. But once you see them, they can see you too." He paused. It just so happened that he died with resentment, and suddenly saw a creature similar to the culprit who killed him in confusion, so he would naturally take action and want to avenge himself. The white tiger guards tried hard to digest Tang Liu's words, and then raised their own questions based on the information they knew. So, the thing that State Master saw just now was the soul of a victim. The existence of the soul is no secret, because the study of mental power cannot avoid the soul. It is also generally believed in the current empire that mental power is generated by the soul. Tang Liu curled the corners of his lips. From now on, it is no longer accurate to say soul. Because the soul is awake and harmless. The thing you encountered just now should be called ghost. That is not a brand new term. But what comes out of the mouth of the blue Imperial Master in front of him at this moment? Obviously, it will be a concept that refreshes the Empire's new cognition. The white tiger guards are waiting for the Imperial Master's next words. The dog author is stuck in the process of adapting to the new situation. Starting to resume updating. Internship is really a good thing. Don't do internship again next time. You may not learn anything related to your major, but it is indeed a precious experience. Well, the advantage is that when you go to work in a similar company or a similar department in the future, you don't have to learn from scratch. Doge, of course. This is only limited to the dog author's own situation. Doge, see you tomorrow. The dog author will gradually update. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 944 Spirit. Living people can move around in the mortal world because of their souls, and the souls are able to fit in and control the body because of their vitality. When the vitality is exhausted, the soul will leave the body. However, the mortal world is like a dangerous and miserable place, ravaged by wind and sand for the soul. If there is no external interference, it cannot stay for long and will be sent to reincarnation by the rules of heaven and earth. At this time, if there are villains who use evil methods to torture and confuse the souls, they can turn the ghosts into vicious puppets. How about it? Does it sound familiar? The white tiger guard was silent for a while before answering Tang Liu's question. Evil soul master. The blue state master nodded slightly. The evil souls refined by evil soul masters have a resentment and hatred on the surface that are very similar to ghosts, but the power that really drives the ghosts and supports them to linger in the world of suffering is called obsession. Because of the obsession, the incomplete soul lingers at the place of death, refusing to fall into reincarnation. And because the soul is incomplete, the memory of life is also incomplete, wandering around in a daze like a machine. It will only react when it touches on things related to its death. It will be more complicated to explain in detail, but what you just said should be enough for you to write a report. Tang Liu narrated this in a flat tone, walked away a few steps with his hands behind his back, and suddenly turned around and looked at the two white tiger guards who were standing there in a daze, and said, "By the way, tell your majesty not to attack this guy. He is just a passerby who is inexplicably implicated. If he is caught as research material after his death, it would be too miserable, even if this confused soul is very likely to be the first ghost in this world. Your majesty, there are still many research materials you want, so there is no need to rush this one." He continued to walk out. The white tiger guards noticed that the right fist of the state master was clenched behind his back, with a faint blue light leaking out between his fingers, as if he had caught a ball of light in his palm. However, at this moment, he paused and said to himself, "Forget it, I can't expect him to have self-control, so it's better to stay away from him." The next second, the state master extended his right hand into the void on the side, and his arm passed through the deep blue light and penetrated the void. When he retracted it, the light in his palm had disappeared. Tang Liu clapped his hands, and wiped his hands with a handkerchief. If he really can't wait even this little time, let him go to his uncle to ask for it himself. He pinched the handkerchief between his fingertips and flicked it lightly. The handkerchief flew and turned into foam like bright blue spots, which disappeared. He turned around and disappeared at the corner of the alley. Only two white tiger guards were left, looking at each other in silence. The Lord State Master has just said it very clearly. So, they just need to report it truthfully. But now, there is one last thing left. The Lord State Master said before that the soul of the ghost will linger at the place of death because of its obsession. So where is the body of the ghost just now? The white tiger guards all looked at the inconspicuous sewage bucket not far away. The faces under the helmets were a little solemn. Suddenly, a voice rang out from their exclusive internal communication channel. A16, A26, the system detected that your armor had an abnormal release record 5 minutes ago. Are you in danger, white tiger guards? I almost forgot about this. What should I do? Can I tell them that the Lord State Master violently removed their armor? What should I do if I don't dare to report the Imperial Master? But if I don't, what awaits them is to remove the 5 times gravity load of the armor without permission and run 10 kilometers. In a handwritten review of 10,000 words. The Imperial Master harmed me. The white tiger guards cried out in grief. However, they immediately ran out of the alley. After all, the mission is to protect the Imperial Master. No matter what, the duty is important, the duty is important. Letting the Imperial Master disappear from their sight for more than 10 seconds is already a very serious dereliction of duty. As for the review and corporal punishment, they can put it aside for now. After that, the return journey was smooth. It's just that the encrypted video of Xingshan Island came faster than Tang Liu imagined. Almost as soon as Tang Liu entered the house, a familiar young voice rang out. Jinring Su, who had been watching the drama on the sofa all day, rolled her eyes and moved to another position with snacks in her arms. Tang Liu watched the white tiger guards carefully hand him the virtual screen projected on the armor. Sighing lightly, he was not surprised. He walked to the dining table and sat down, posing comfortably, looking at the young eyes and eyebrows of the man on the screen. The armor of each white tiger guard would clearly record all the images they saw at all times and upload them to the cloud in real time. So even if Tang Liu did not see the two of them reporting to the higher-ups along the way, he did not find it strange that the person from Xingshan Island knew about it so quickly. The white tiger guard followed Tang Liu obediently, standing up straight with his arms raised in front of his chest and abdomen, so that the figure on the screen could look at the sitting national master at eye level. The warm light cast a gentle light on the handsome eyebrows and eyes of the national master, bringing a bit of dazed divinity. Especially when he lowered his eyes, it seemed as if he was always expressing silent compassion. The person behind the armor could not help but look away, but the next second his eyes unconsciously moved closer to him. What a contradiction. I thought I had made it very clear if you had seen the video of their armor, Your Majesty. If you want to know more, you can find the relevant information. Isn't the Wangxiang Palace on Xingshan Island? Tang Liu finished speaking calmly, waiting for the reply from the person on the other side of the screen. After a moment of silence, the young voice said, "The State Master has misunderstood. The national sacrifice is coming soon. I just care if everything is going well. Tang Liu's expression remained unchanged. Really? I don't believe it, young voice. Also, King Shen Douluo has been visiting the island frequently recently, so I must remind you that his annual appointment with you is coming soon. Tang Liu's eyelids twitched, but he remained calm. That's all. The young voice fell into a long silence. In the end, he was defeated first. Any unknown is an unstable factor for the empire, especially this kind of unknown thing that may have a huge impact on the stability of people's livelihood. Before the impact expands, I need to master the means to kill the threat at any time. Tang Liu did not comment. So, young voice, I need you to provide research samples to the Imperial Academy of Sciences as soon as possible, and it should be enough research samples. Tang Liu, well, I said, go to your uncle for it. Young voice, Tang Liu, I know you are anxious, but don't worry. The White Tiger Guards, who dared not move in the increasingly heavy atmosphere. The filter of the national teacher suddenly shattered again. Tang Liu took advantage of the victory and pursued, you are not embarrassed, right? No way, no way. The other party was so angry that he immediately cut off the video. Chapter 945, Continue to Practice. Jin Ringsu, who was leaning against the door of the bedroom, which was also a blind spot for the video, ate potato chips and peeked at the screen for a long time. She said, with a double meaning, Liu, you are really 6, in such a big empire. The only one who dared to argue with the emperor directly was probably the imperial teacher who taught all the royal family members from childhood to adulthood. She patted the residue on her hands and walked out. Then for the unknown things you mentioned, may I ask the magical imperial teacher, do you have any good countermeasures? Can you tell me? Facing Jin Ringsu's ridicule and sarcasm, Tang Liu looked accustomed to it and asked her, remember the company I asked you to start? Hearing this, Jin Ringsu raised her eyebrows. Shixin, recalling the full name registered at that time, she suddenly realized, Zuanmi. Got it. She looked at Tang Liu again and met his smiling eyes. The national sacrifice is coming soon, and there is also Wang Suzhe. So what are you planning to do? Tang Liu smiled and nodded, 80% correct. Jin Ringsu rolled her eyes and turned away. Tisk, why bother? Tang Liu, I don't understand why this woman changes her face so quickly every time it comes to things related to the White Tiger royal family. He looked at the White Tiger Guards who dare not say a word. I've heard it all. Go back and write a report. White Tiger Guards, no, the two of you are playing dumb just now. How should this report be written? The White Tiger Guards felt confused and messy. Tang Liu narrowed his eyes slightly, then smiled. By the way, don't forget to write a report on the record of the armor abnormality being lifted. Give the review to me for review first, and don't let AI help write it, understand? The White Tiger Guards saw that the word threat was written all over the State Master's face, which was smiling harmlessly. They really heard something they shouldn't have heard, right? So aggrieved. The White Tiger Guards walked away with their metal heads drooping. A 10,000-word self-criticism. Handwritten. And no technology is allowed. It's going to kill me. The White Tiger Guards cried like a cat in their armor. Hey, kid. Wake up. The Golden Dragon King poked Tang Wulin's little face with the tip of his wing, waking him up from his sleep. Tang Wulin moved his hands and turned over. The Golden Dragon King patiently crawled forward a few steps, and poked Tang Wulin's face with his pointed front paws. The time has come. You should go out and practice with a master in the human outside. Tang Wulin then hummed in response, reluctantly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the window. After holding his breath for a while and recognizing the familiar whoosh sound outside, he was sure that a new day had indeed arrived. It was just that Tang Wulin didn't want to get up today, because he had never slept so comfortably. Since he closed his eyes last night, his whole body has always been warm, neither cold nor hot, maintaining a very comfortable temperature, ironing his bones soft. The Golden Dragon King saw that he didn't want to move much, so he said, the technique you practice is very special. You can practice it anytime and anywhere, even in your sleep. But if the soul power you practiced all night is not guided and integrated the next day, it may cause your body to be unable to adapt. You need to supplement it with corresponding exercises to prevent your meridians from being unable to withstand the impact of too much soul power and exploding and dying. Tang Wulin's eyes widened at once. Ah, really? You said that Xingluo people don't like to Xingluo people. Golden Dragon King, if I had known earlier, I would have kicked this brat down. Tang Wulin sat up, rubbed his eyes and said sullenly, I almost forgot that you are not from Xingluo. You are not even a human being, you are just a little dragon." As he spoke, he stretched out his feet to look for slippers. Although the kid's words were a bit presumptuous, the Golden Dragon King felt itchy when he heard the sleepy little voice, so he decided not to bother with him for the time being. As soon as Tang Wulin got out of bed, the Golden Dragon King jumped into the quilt and curled himself up comfortably. He suddenly woke the kid up out of kindness, just to have the whole bed to himself. The human cub was too fragile, and he didn't dare to fall asleep with Tang Wulin, for fear that he would accidentally crush the person to death, or turn over and blow the person away with his wings. Tang Wulin changed his clothes, dragged his long wooden stick, and walked towards the door of his house in a daze with empty eyes. The feeling of soaking in warm water still did not go away, and he felt that he could fall asleep at any time. Lang Yu and Tang Ziren already knew that he had to go practice with his neighbors very early, so Lang Yu got up earlier today and was busy in the kitchen. Both husband and wife had jobs, but in order to take care of Tang Wulin's practice time, they unanimously decided to take turns getting up half an hour earlier every day to prepare breakfast. Lang Yu heard the noise in the kitchen and came out to say hello to her baby. "Good morning, baby, are you going to practice?" As a result, she watched Tang Wulin float past her like a wandering soul, stretched out his hand to pull the door handle several times before opening the door and staggering out. It seemed that he didn't notice her at all, nor did he hear her voice. Lang Yu was stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Sure enough, it is unlikely that a child of this age can get up so early every day. But since he has already started practicing, sleep is no longer a particularly important way of rest, and Lang Yu is not worried that Tang Wulin's physical health will be affected. She leaned close to the window of the living room and quietly looked at the cute little face of her own baby who was studying hard outside, and then returned to the kitchen with satisfaction to continue preparing breakfast. Outside, Tang Liu smiled at the child who couldn't open his eyes, and snapped his fingers in his ear. With a pop, Tang Wulin woke up instantly, and the previous sleepiness disappeared without a trace. Raising his eyes and bumping into the smiling face of the young man in front of him, Tang Wulin was stunned for a moment, and then greeted him obediently. "Little uncle, good morning." Tang Liu also smiled. "Good morning to you too, little Wulin." Then he said, "Today is the same as yesterday. First practice those few moves slowly, and then I will teach you a few new ones. Is that okay?" "Do you remember yesterday's moves?" Tang Wulin nodded repeatedly like a chicken pecking at rice. "Yeah, I still remember. I'm fine." Tang Liu smiled. "Not bad, let's start now. I'll go with you." As soon as the voice fell, he gently swung out a blue light with his right hand, and the light quickly extended and transformed into a gorgeous blue-silver spirit emperor spear. This simple move made the little kid's eyes light up, and it was easy to rouse the kid's ambition from the interest aspect. Tang Liu blinked and smiled. "Are you ready? You can go a little faster today." After seeing Tang Wulin nod, he continued, "Then let's start." Two figures, one big and one small, raised their guns, sticks, and stabbed forward at the same time. That day, Tang Liu's online chat number vibrated. "Dayuns? Dayuns, what did you send me again?" Chapter 946, Beside the Blue-Silver Grass. They danced with their weapons in sync. Although their movements were slow, each simple move was quite powerful. Yesterday's spear style was completed quickly. Tang Wulin stopped here and immediately fixed his eyes on the young man next to him. The young man continued to dance with a blue-silver spiritual emperor spear naturally. His steps changed smoothly. His arms drove the spear. His fingertips flexibly manipulated the straight spear shaft, and danced beautiful spear flowers around his body until he ended with a fierce forward stab. Tang Liu put away his spear and looked at Tang Wulin, who was already eager to try. He smiled and said, "Did you see it clearly? If you see it clearly, then try it yourself. The moves I teach you today do not require strength, but flexibility and coordination. It should be enough for you to practice for a while." But before the little kid couldn't wait to start, he reminded him, "You can practice how to turn it first." Tang Liu pointed at the long wooden stick in Tang Wulin's hand. Actions like this require a certain amount of finger strength, and how strong can a 6-year-old child's fingers be? He might not even be able to spin a pen, let alone a long wooden stick that is several times larger and heavier than an ordinary pen. However, Tang Liu was not worried that Tang Wulin would not be able to spin it. First of all, the kid had already started practicing, and he was a soul master with full innate soul power. The nourishment of the 10th level soul power would have made his physical fitness much higher than that of an ordinary child. Secondly, and most importantly, he still had the power of the ancestor of power, the Golden Dragon King. Although Tang Liu completely stripped the blood power of the Golden Dragon King from him, with a contract, Tang Wuling could still enjoy the benefits of the Golden Dragon King's abilities. It all depended on whether the Golden Dragon King was willing to lend it to him. Tang Wuling had already tried it excitedly. In the first few attempts, the wooden stick fell down as soon as it started spinning, and Tang Wuling was in a panic to catch it. But he couldn't catch it, so he had to bend down and pick it up from the ground. But he was not discouraged. He kept trying, with the determination to fight to the end. Tang Liu noticed that the skin on his wrist that was exposed had some fine golden mesh patterns. After countless failures, he finally succeeded in slowly turning the long wooden stick in his hand. Seeing this, Tang Liu stopped worrying about it. He didn't call for a stop until Tang Wuling could turn the long wooden stick in his hand for a few circles at a very slow speed. Today's spearmanship practice ends here. Now follow me. Tang Wuling raised the wooden stick and looked up at the young man in front of him in confusion. Tang Liu didn't explain too much. He put away the gun and turned around to walk away. Tang Wuling hurriedly followed. The two finally stopped in front of a lawn. It was full of crystal blue silver grass, swaying gently with a breeze that didn't touch the skin, soft and fresh. Some of the blue silver grass that sensed their auras were shaking and eager to come over to cling to them, but because they had no soul power and no external help, they could only stay there like ordinary grass. Tang Liu then turned his head to Tang Wuling beside him and said, "Your martial soul is the Blue Silver Emperor, right?" Tang Wuling looked stupid. "Uncle. How did you know?" Tang Liu couldn't help laughing and pinched his little face. "Have you forgotten what uncles do? Everyone who awakens their martial souls and accompanies their soul power must register their information in the database. The uncles and aunts in the supervisory bureau can check it out at any time to check if you have done anything bad with your soul power." Tang Wuling said oh twice, his eyes turned into stars. "Is the supervisory bureau so powerful? I want to go to the supervisory bureau in the future." Tang Liu smiled and rubbed his head. "Then you have to study hard and take the civil service exam in the future." Tang Wuling agreed very readily, even though he was very young and didn't understand what civil service exam meant. No longer using his claws to scratch the kid's tender face and round head, Tang Liu returned to the main topic and said, "The second thing I want to teach you today is cultivation. Come, sit on the lawn and meditate, release your martial spirit, and then practice Zhuangshengguang." "Okay," Tang Wuling responded obediently, put his long wooden stick on the ground, and then carefully sat down on the lawn. Children of this age are clumsy, and they have to use both hands to stretch their legs to sit cross-legged. After finally doing it, he spread his palms and summoned his martial spirit. When the blue crystal-like vines with golden silk threads grew out of his palms, the blue-silver grass on the lawn cheered and jumped for joy. Under the influence of an unknown force, starting from around Tang Wuling, the blue-silver grass began to grow rapidly, and soon grew to a height of 1 foot, almost covering Tang Wuling in the lush blue-silver grass. All this, Tang Wuling, who was already immersed in the state of cultivation, was unaware of. Similar to the warm feeling when getting up in the morning, when the soul power started to circulate in his body according to the root of the technique, he clearly felt that there seemed to be countless small light spots rushing towards him, twisting their buttocks and eagerly drilling into his body. Then they gathered into his soul power, and then followed his soul power to travel through his limbs and bones, quietly integrating into every part of his body. The difference is that the warmth when getting up was like taking a hot bath, while the warmth now was more like basking in the morning sun. Tang Wuling silently compared it in his heart, and suddenly felt that his eyes were bright. Then, some joyful emotions that came from nowhere suddenly hit his mind, and his own mood also jumped up. He curiously cast his gaze over, wanting to look along those inexplicable emotions and find their owners. At this moment, it seemed as if his thinking was extended, and he seemed to suddenly have many pairs of small eyes growing in different positions, allowing him to see a different world. And he finally understood that the owners of those inexplicable emotions were the blue-silver grass around him. The little brat felt curious and excited, his consciousness kept shuttling between each blade of grass, as happy as a fish swimming in water. Tang Liu watched the blue-silver emperor vine in Tang Wuling's palm grow slowly, and finally grew into a cluster of fluffy vines, swaying gently. It was at this time that the surrounding blue-silver grass condensed into countless blue light spots. These firefly-like glimmers swarmed towards Tang Wuling in the center, forming a wave-like vision. Tang Liu watched all this, his lips slightly raised, and it was unknown what he was thinking. 10 minutes later, Tang Liu finally called to wake Tang Wulin up. Tang Wulin, who was awakened, looked at the blue-silver grass that was about a foot high around him with a confused face, and his curious and inquisitive eyes immediately fell on the young man next to him. Chapter 947, Mimicry Training. Tang Liu smiled and explained to him, "This is your second training besides spearmanship, called mimicry training. Ancient Soul Master research shows that when Soul Masters practice in places closely related to their martial souls, their training speed will be faster than usual. According to current theories, it is actually the entity corresponding to the martial soul, such as your blue-silver emperor, and other soul beasts. The places where they gather are usually very suitable for their survival. In addition to food factors, because they are soul beasts and need to practice, the heaven and earth elemental energy in those places, whether in terms of concentration or attributes, must be extremely compatible with them. So correspondingly, if a soul master can practice in the same environment, the training speed will be much faster. In essence, it is because the heaven and earth elemental energy contained in such an environment is most compatible with you and can be refined by you faster. This is mimicry training. But your blue-silver emperor martial soul is a bit different. You should know that blue-silver grass is the most common plant on the entire Douluo star, right? Tang Wulin had already walked out of the blue-silver grass and nodded repeatedly. Tang Liu continued, because the blue-silver grass has strong vitality and can adapt well to any environment, it can become the most common plants on Douluo star. But this also means that in most places where they grow, the heaven and earth yuanli is nothing special and of little help to cultivation. He paused, smiled and asked, "But how did you feel in the last 10 minutes compared to when you were practicing yesterday?" Tang Wulin thought about it carefully and said, "The speed of the soul power didn't seem to get much faster, but the speed of increase got faster." Tang Liu nodded, pointing to the gorgeous blue-gold vine in his palm, and said, "Yes, this is the difference between the blue-silver emperor when it is practicing in a mimicry. If it is a soul beast, then the blue-silver emperor is the blue-silver grass of a soul beast that has practiced for 100,000 years. You know this, right?" Tang Wulin nodded obediently. "Yes, I'm familiar with the story of Tang San's ancestor. Mom and Dad used to tell me often." Tang Liu smiled non-committally and continued, "The blue-silver emperor is both the emperor and the parent of the blue-silver grass. Therefore, you who possess the blue-silver emperor martial spirit are naturally supported and loved by all the blue-silver grass, and will receive their help in every possible way." He waved his hand, motioning Tang Wulin to come closer, and then pointed to the blue-silver grass. "Look carefully, the thin layer of light that is lingering around you now. Do you see it? Guess what it is?" Tang Wulin looked in the direction of his fingertips, and indeed saw a faint blue-gold light mist on the blue-silver grass. Looking more carefully, he found that the thin light seemed to exist not only on the blue-silver grass, but also on his side and behind him. And the source of the thin light seemed to come from Tang Wulin's palm, which was still swaying gently when he looked down at it. The child's surprised voice sounded, "Uncle, what is this?" He also looked up at the tall young man next to him. Tang Liu smiled and explained to him in a low voice, "Generally speaking, a powerful martial spirit will more or less bring some talents to its spirit master, just like some spirit masters have wings and can fly after awakening, not to mention your top-level plant martial spirit, the blue-silver emperor." He pointed to the thin light again. "Look, this is the talent that the blue-silver emperor martial spirit brings you, the blue-silver domain." Tang Wulin's eyes lit up. "Domain?" Tang Liu repeated with a smile. "Yes, it's the domain." Tang Wulin's pair of beautiful big eyes flashed bling. "So do I have my own spirit skills?" Tang Liu smiled even more and nodded. "You can say that." Tang Wulin jumped up directly. "Great, in the blue-silver domain, you will get help from all the blue-silver grass. You can command them at will, and likewise, they will also receive your favor. From now on, I require you to practice next to the blue-silver grass for at least 3 hours every day. While they are helping you increase your cultivation, you are also helping them grow faster." Tang Liu rubbed the little brat's head. "At the same time, when you are practicing, you should also try to feel the emotions of the blue-silver grasses. This is not only a training of your mental strength, but also a means of tempering your character." As he spoke, Tang Liu took a step forward and half-crouched in front of the blue-silver grass. He reached into the void with his palm and actually took out a flower pot that was neither too big nor too small. He then stretched out his hand and lightly brushed across the lawn, and then wiped it on the flower pot filled with soil. After a flash of blue light, A small blue silver grass was transplanted into the flower pot. He raised the corners of his lips and handed the flower pot with a small blue silver grass to Tang Liu. From now on, you should take good care of it. When the blue silver grass is covered with soil, vines grow, and when you have raised 5 pots, he stood up, clapped his hands, and said to Tang Liu with a hooked lip, that's when you will be graduated. Finally, Tang Liu took Tang Liu to practice the purple demon pupil, and then let him go back. Looking at the little figure walking back with some difficulty holding the flower pot and the long wooden stick, Tang Liu had a smile on his face. Then he turned around and squatted, looking at the blue silver grass that had emerged. After staring at it for a while, he sighed softly and whispered, it's so tall. If you don't want to be trimmed, you can't stay here anymore. He stretched out his hand, and the blue silver grasses immediately rushed over, and the leaves gently and tenderly wrapped around his fingers. He laughed and said, then it's a deal, follow me, and take root again in my place. A blue light suddenly lit up, as if suddenly connecting to another world. Over there, was a crystal clear and dreamy blue-silver nursery. The light went out, and all the blue-silver grasses that were spawned by the blue-silver field disappeared. The lawn returned to its original state. Tang Liu stood up and glanced at the blue-silver lawn. After a long pause, he turned and walked away. It may not be a bad thing to have no intelligence, he whispered softly. If you are afraid of the difficulty of cutting metal and stone, then don't grow up anymore. Suddenly, a smile climbed up the corners of his lips again. He chuckled and shook his head. But it won't be blue silver grass then. The young man walked back in a good mood, even humming a rare song at leisure. Then he made a gesture and sent a message to the White Tiger guards in the dark. Inform them, the venue for the national sacrifice can be arranged. But the state master wants to be lazy today, so I won't go to watch it in person. Come on, I'm rooting for you. White Tiger guards. The next second a new message came, the number of words in the review is halved. White Tiger guards, okay, State Master, no problem, State Master, I'll go right away, State Master, you are my divine State Master. Chapter 948 Zidingshan. The warm golden sunlight shone through the gaps in the heavy curtains onto Zidingshan's face, waking him up from his deep sleep. He frowned, turned over to face the sun, and subconsciously reached out to the side, wanting to embrace the delicate body of last night. But he touched nothing. Zidingshan opened his eyes and looked around. Sure enough, there was no one beside him, and the person beside him had disappeared. He sat up with a gloomy face. Leng Yulei, his boss in name only. However, he didn't know the origin of this boss. This woman named Leng Yulei suddenly appeared in Aole City a year ago and found him. At that time, the gym he was running was facing the crisis of bankruptcy, and he was still worrying about how to make a living, when Leng Yulei appeared. Let him be her male companion, to use a more pleasant word. The corresponding reward is that she will let him join their business, which is the kind of business that is very profitable, and you will never have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of your life if you do 2 jobs. If he wanted, she was also willing to invest to help him stabilize the operation of his small gym. At that time, Zidingshan had no reason to refuse, and the temptation of the huge benefits mentioned by Leng Yulei was also Leng Yulei's impressive appearance. In short, Zidingshan, who was desperate and blinded by greed, agreed to Leng Yulei's request without surprise. He has been deeply involved since then, unable to get out of it, and it is out of control. After all, how could a small local gangster think that a woman who looks delicate, rich, beautiful, and a little bit brainy, who just finds him, would have the strength and means that he can't resist at all? Frankly speaking, in the year with Leng Yulei, Zidingshan did get unimaginable wealth and status. Of course, it would be a lie for him to say that he is not vain to be able to get together with such a rare and powerful beauty. On the one hand, he was in awe of her and afraid of her, and on the other hand, he couldn't help but envy and hate her. He hated her superiority and her almsgiving attitude towards him, but he had to kowtow and try his best to please her. Everything he had now was given by Leng Yulei. If Leng Yulei wanted, she could take it back at any time. And he had to hold such a fear and humiliate her. He felt that his dignity as a man was trampled under his feet, but he took the initiative to throw his dignity under her feet again and let her humiliate him. He wished that everything Leng Yulei had was his, and he could sit in Leng Yulei's position. In that case, he must let the woman experience his pain in person, and then trample her into the dust, so that she could only become a lowly plaything. But he couldn't do it, because he couldn't even keep the identity of plaything. If he couldn't make that woman happy, she could always change him for someone new and tired of the old. He could only retaliate against these frustrations when she needed him, and only then could he find some sense of accomplishment as a man. However, every pleasure was indeed enjoyable, but when the woman was satisfied, her disappearance like now reminded him all the time that he was just a tool. And tools can be replaced at any time. A more intense sense of frustration, accompanied by a stronger sense of humiliation and resentment, swept over, making the dark thoughts in his heart grow more uncontrollably. Just like now. Zidingshan was extremely irritated and punched the elastic bed with his fist. He lifted the light silk quilt on his body, got out of bed, walked to the window naked, and then pulled open the curtains. The sun shone on his bronze body, and he stared at the busy streets downstairs with sinister eyes, his eyes full of thoughts. The situation like the wild man yesterday must not happen again. Otherwise. But fortunately, he has taught the wild man enough lessons. I hope that in the next life, the man will grow up and not covet everyone's things. A hint of coldness crossed Zidingshan's face. Thinking of the poor guy who was dealt with by him and stuffed into the bucket yesterday, a cruel smile suddenly appeared on the corners of his lips. Yes, even if he was just a toy for Leng Yulei's amusement, he still regarded Leng Yulei as his own property and would never allow others to touch him. He could hate Leng Yulei's arrogance and accept everything Leng Yulei gave him with peace of mind. But he could not accept the fact that he was not important to Leng Yulei at all, and he could not tolerate Leng Yulei kicking him and then going to find someone else. Suddenly, the communication ring rang. He looked back, then walked to the bed, reached out and clicked on his own smart brain on the bedside table. The communication was connected, and the smart brain automatically projected a virtual light screen, showing the face of the subordinate over there. The subordinate was stunned when he saw the naked Zidingshan appear in front of him. Then he smiled ambiguously. "Hey, boss, it looks like you just spent an unforgettable night." He lowered his eyes and aimed at a certain part of Zidingshan's body on the other side of the screen. He whistled twice and said with a sly smile, "You are so lucky, boss." Zidingshan had a gloomy face and was in no mood to pay attention to the teasing of his subordinates. He said, "What do you want to talk to me about?" The subordinate put away his ambiguous look and talked about business tactfully. "Nothing. Just a batch of new goods arrived tonight, which is the order that the big boss mentioned before. I called to remind you not to forget to pick up the goods tonight." Zidingshan pinched his eyebrows and turned to the bathroom. "Got it, send me the address and the order list later." After a while, the sound of water came from the bathroom. The subordinate looked around the room where Zidingshan was, especially the big bed next to it that looked particularly soft and full of interest. But he didn't see anything, not a single person. The subordinate curled his lips, said "Okay, boss," and hung up the call. He thought he could see the true face of the beauty who spent the night with Zidingshan, but he didn't see anything. It was really disappointing. The light screen flickered, and the personal intelligence computer on the bedside table also dimmed. At this moment, on the same floor opposite Wang Suhe, the purple light in Meng Ju's eyes faded, and he also put down his right hand holding the remote eavesdropping device. At the same moment, in a small breakfast shop downstairs, a beautiful figure with silver hair and purple eyes put down the last sip of soy milk, carried a limited edition bag and left, and then disappeared into the crowd. After watching the obviously worthless beauty leave, the owner of the breakfast shop couldn't help but sigh that his fly restaurant had no virtue to allow such a customer to come, and he was afraid that he was lucky. But looking at the notorious Wang Suzi opposite, the boss inexplicably felt that it was reasonable. Chapter 949, Lurking Operation. It was late at night. There were no people or vehicles. When most people were resting, it was convenient for some people to do some shameful things. The huge van was driving on the quiet road. The driver with a big beard in the cab played his favorite songs and twisted his body to the music from time to time. Suddenly, a faint roar interrupted his rhythm. He picked up the iron rod beside him in dissatisfaction and knocked heavily on the iron plate behind him. He turned around and shouted, "Hey, hey, be quiet. You want to die?" The movement in the car behind him disappeared. The driver put down the rod with satisfaction and continued to hum and sing to the music and twist his body. But not long after, he heard another collision from behind. He didn't even think about where the sound came from. He picked up the stick and hit the partition behind the seat reflexively, saying in a very irritable and impatient manner, "I said quiet. You beasts." After knocking, he was silent for a while and found that there was indeed no new movement. He knocked hard on the partition again as if to vent his anger, and then stopped. He changed a song, continued to hum, and twisted his body. At this time, on the roof of the car, a slender figure wearing a nightgown and a mask slowly stood up from a half-squatting position and walked to the back of the car with barely audible footsteps. From under the mask came his muffled voice, which was not quite real in the airflow of the moving vehicle. Please keep an eye on the surveillance along the way. The lazy voice of his partner sounded in the headset. Don't worry, Meng Xiaju. After a pause, the person on the other end spoke again. It is expected that a car will pass from the opposite side in 3 minutes. You have about 1 second to unlock the lock. Meng Ju walked to the back of the car, squatted down, stuck his head out to look at the situation, and said, it looks like just an ordinary combination lock. Then he climbed on the edge of the roof with his left hand, and the whole person fell down, hanging directly on the back of the car with the strength of one hand. The partner's voice rang out, are you sure you want to go in? Judging from the detection data transmitted by you, the soul power fluctuations of the guy trapped in this car are not low. What if you are discovered? What if I am discovered? That means there is something wrong with the equipment issued by the organization. When you write your report later, don't forget to include those guys in charge of research and purchase, Meng Ju said calmly. After all, people like you who don't go out on field work only have this little bit of use, right? The partner was speechless for a long time. Okay, I shouldn't question the decision made by you, a noble field executor. You are a professional, and I shouldn't say too much. Okay, Meng Ju, that's good to know, partner, you deserve to die. A light sigh came from the earphone, and then he was heard saying, be careful, we are not sure what is locked in there yet. Not to mention whether you can get away. If we alert the enemy, all our efforts will be in vain. Meng Ju paused. Got it, okay. Get ready to unlock the door. Only when the vehicle passes by, the noise of your picking the lock may not be noticed by the guy driving in front. But you have to be careful not to let the cargo door pop out accidentally. Because that kind of noise can't be covered up by the sound of vehicles driving at cross speed. In addition, those guys who are now locked in may also notice the movement at the moment you unlock the door, and their reactions are unpredictable. Meng Ju raised his hand and covered the combination lock of the compartment door. The electronic screen suddenly seemed to be disturbed by something and began to become distorted. Don't talk nonsense, believe me, the vehicle is about 50 meters away from you. 3, 2, 1, now. Meng Ju's ears had already caught the sound of the oncoming vehicle. Almost at the moment when his partner's order was given in the headset, the electronic combination lock in front of him had gone black for a moment due to his interference. With a click, the cargo door opened, and it was about to pop out due to inertia. But just after it revealed a gap that was just big enough for one person to get in, it stopped moving against common sense. Meng Ju had already let go and turned over to get in, and the door was locked again. The moment he entered the dark compartment, a pungent odor hit him in the face. Meng Ju remained calm, and the nanorbits on the surface of his nightgown began to work. The number is naturally not enough to form a heavy armor like the White Tiger guards, but it is enough to form a device that covers the body to refract the surrounding light, allowing him to achieve a similar invisibility effect in the eyes of others. Activating the purple demon pupil allowed him to see the situation in the dark compartment clearly. The two sides were filled with iron cages, all of which contained soul beasts of different species. The bottom of the cages was filled with the feces and excrement of the soul beasts, which was the reason for the stench in the carriage. Meng Ju walked inside while looking around. He whispered, Snow Spirit Fox, Red Flame Fox, Demon Eye Ape, Green Leaf Macaque. Most of them are soul beasts with valuable fur. There are both adults and juveniles. There are no less than 30 of them. Moreover, they are all grade 2. He approached an iron cage containing a snow spirit fox. It was full of fox cubs, which looked like they were only a few months old. They were huddled together and shivering. Meng Ju glanced at the iron cage next to him that contained an adult snow spirit fox, paused, and said, I don't know what these people did to them. They seem to be completely unable to gather soul power. His partner, who saw the situation inside the carriage clearly through the camera on his body, looked a little solemn. Take some blood samples and take them back for testing. Maybe they were injected with some drugs. Meng Ju continued to walk inside, squatting at a certain place to check, and then he said, no need. His partner also saw what he was checking. Meng Ju took a plastic bag from the camouflage 24 Bridges moonlit night on his waist and took some of the remaining residues in the bowl in front of him. While putting away the collected samples, he said, I found out before that this car came from across the province, and now there are no syringes here. With such a long distance and no base in the middle, if they want to ensure that these soul beasts can stay honestly, they can only put drugs in the food fed to the soul beasts. The partner tracked the truck all the way through the surveillance on the road. He is driving to the suburbs, and the surveillance along the way is getting less and less. He should be close to their trading location, Meng Zhu said. There may be signal jammers there. I'll try to use satellite tracking to track my signal later. No problem. They whispered to each other through the headsets, and Meng Zhu walked a little further inside and found a secluded corner to hide his figure. But he didn't notice that in the shadow next to the car door, a pair of golden eyes opened and were secretly looking at him. The next second, it disappeared into the darkness again. What's even more strange is that even if Meng Zhu used the purple demon pupil, he didn't notice that there was something hidden in the shadow. Chapter 950 In the abandoned amusement park. The humming sound of the engine gradually became clearer, and the high beam of the vehicle came over. Zidingshan narrowed his eyes and led the group of brothers behind him to meet them. The truck, which looked nothing special, stopped in front of them, and after a while, the sound of the door opening and closing was heard. The driver with a big beard came down and grinned. Long time no see, Brother Z, how are you these days? Zidingshan shook his outstretched hand and said with the same smile, not bad. His eyes casually swept to the huge cargo box behind him and said, are all the goods this time here? The driver chuckled, of course, including the one that the big boss specified. He stretched out his hand to make an A gesture, and continued with a wink, we spent a lot of effort to catch it. My goodness, it was so fierce, Zidingshan sneered, not wanting to listen to his nonsense anymore, and waved his hand and said, okay, go in, so that I can let the brothers unload the goods. The driver rubbed his hands and smiled flatteringly. Hey, okay. He turned back to the car, and Zidingshan also walked to the side. The men in the security booth raised the railings to make way. The truck started and slowly drove into the depths of the dark park in front of him. The huge park was full of abandoned facilities, and the shadow of the roller coaster track looked like an indescribable tentacle in the night. There was no laughter in the amusement park late at night, but it seemed that there were monsters hiding and devouring people. The truck finally stopped in the most remote corner of the abandoned amusement park. That was the haunted house. When the haunted house was built, it was set as an abandoned mental hospital. Of course, the park was not really rich enough to restore the entire hospital one-to-one. The building in front of us was just a 3-story building similar to an ordinary residential building. However, this abandoned hospital was full of atmosphere. The broken and rusty hospital name sign on the iron fence arch, coupled with the empty and withered scenery in the front yard, really gave a depressed and chilling feeling. But Meng Zhu, who was hiding in the car, knew nothing about these creepy scenes. From the moment the truck drove into this place, his partner could no longer use external surveillance to observe his whereabouts. He now only knew that he was in the abandoned amusement park in the western suburbs. Thinking of this, his eyes darkened. Sure enough, the two guys deliberately appeared here and beat up Zidingshan's group, just to make him pay attention to this park. I didn't expect them to use this place as a base. It's really hidden. What's more, there's a popular check-in spot on this abandoned park. Meng Zhu memorized the map of the park. Although he stayed in the car, he could still roughly confirm its route in the park by the shaking amplitude of the vehicle. So he knew that the truck was parked near the so-called popular check-in spot, which is the haunted house in the abandoned park. It's really dark under the lamp. These criminals are very brave. Aren't they afraid of being discovered by the people who come here to explore? Meng Zhu frowned suddenly. No, maybe someone has already seen their transaction, but they just dealt with it. Think about the stories that have spread from here. Some of them are probably the noise they made when they traded. And the other part is the people who came here to explore and were suspected of being killed. The mixture of the two, true and false, has attracted wave after wave of curious explorers, making this place a net celebrity check-in spot. But if people really disappeared here, has the police never received a report? Or did they receive it, but when they came here to check, they couldn't find anything? Meng Zhu couldn't think about it any further, because the door of the cargo box was opened at this moment. The bright light shone in from the gap in the compartment door. Someone was outside with a high-power flashlight. The light of the flashlight swept through his hiding place, but it seemed that he didn't notice this extra uninvited guest at all. Very good, the cloaking device is working normally. Meng Zhu thought calmly. The people outside quickly set up the unloading board to facilitate the transportation of all the cages in the compartment, and Mengju also saw the largest iron cage next to the compartment door with the help of the light outside. And the tiger with bright light golden hair was locked inside. Unlike the black stripes of ordinary tigers, the tigers lying with their eyes closed in the cage have orange-gold stripes. The bright color makes the tiger look quite clean and beautiful in this dirty environment. Mengju was absent-minded for a moment. Coincidentally, the driver was also outside and introduced to Zidingshan. Look, this is the 80,000-year-old golden tiger that the big boss wants. It's not easy to get it, the partner's light hiss sounded in the headset. It's actually a golden tiger? Where did this group of people poach it from? Even Goi can get it. And why didn't you notice that there was another golden tiger in there just now? Mengju was also wondering about this. But what made him feel even more strange was that the only known distribution area of the golden tiger was the Haoshan Nature Reserve in Hudong Province, which is also the Golden Tiger National Park. In addition, there are only a few in the Douluo City Zoo. As a top soul beast, the golden tiger has the ultimate attributes that allow them to easily stand at the top of the food chain. If the golden tiger in front of him really has 80,000 years of cultivation as the driver said, it can easily hunt down an ordinary 100,000-year-old soul beast. Looking at the driver again, he didn't look like he had any cultivation. So how did they catch the golden tiger alive? And, if there are no other golden tiger habitats that have not been discovered in the empire, then the golden tiger in front of them can only be stolen from the Douluo City Zoo or the Golden Tiger National Park. Either of them is not a trivial matter, but why haven't they received any news of the theft of the golden tiger? His partner thought of the same thing as him and said immediately, I'll go check it out. Such a big golden tiger, you use such an ordinary iron cage to lock it up, aren't you afraid that it will escape halfway? Moreover, an 80,000-year-old golden tiger is so powerful that even cultivators over 80 levels have to avoid it temporarily. How did you catch it? Zidingshan asked. But it didn't delay the others to go up and down, and unload all the iron cages in the cargo compartment. Mengju also took this opportunity to follow the footsteps of those people and leave the compartment smoothly. The driver explained with a flattering smile, don't worry. This golden tiger has been drugged by us a long time ago. And now technology is so advanced, a bullet with anesthetic is fired from a distance of hundreds of meters. He made a shooting motion, winking, it's just a snap, even a 100,000-year-old golden tiger will fall down. Zidingshan looked at the cage pushed out by his men and frowned. Do ordinary anesthetics work on these soul beasts? The dog author, after more than half a month of dystocia, finally gave birth to half of it, passed away peacefully while lying on the board. The dog author, continued to give birth to the other half. I originally wanted to write until the end of the National Memorial Service, and post the part about Tang Lin going to elementary school together. But the dog author really can't give birth anymore. Mask of pain. Seeing that the end of the moon is approaching, I will post the half that has been born first to see. Peaceful. The dog author is really trying hard to give birth, but dystocia is really painful. However, in the next national festival plot, there is a question: will there be electronic black and white impermanence in the cyber underworld? So please look forward to it. Thank you all for your support. The dog author is going to continue giving birth. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.